this. I work with a lot of incels. I work with a lot of beta males. It's not that they're wrong. It's that they're woefully incomplete.
Can you heal a mental illness without medication?
Medication never heals mental illness. And I think most psychiatrists would agree with me with that.
I don't think most people understand that. They think medication will heal them.
No, medication manages your symptoms, right? That's why, so if you have ADHD and you take a stimulant medication for a month, it's not like your ADHD is gone at the end of the month.
Or medication cannot heal your mental illness.
I do not believe so.
And you're a Harvard...
Well, there's maybe some exceptions to that, but generally speaking, 99% of medications that we prescribe will manage symptoms. They will not heal anything.
What heals the symptoms so that the illness goes away? Awareness?
No, healing the symptoms.
What alleviates the symptoms?
So symptoms are the fruit of the tree. The illness is the tree. So if
we want to remove the symptom or remove the illness?
That depends on you. So the reason people take medication is because they usually don't have the time, energy, or money to do the healing.
Which it takes time to sit there and observe yourself and meditate or do what's necessary.
And do psychotherapy. So I think psychotherapy is the best evidence-based practice for healing something. So if you take every human who has depression, every human who has anxiety, what you discover is that they spend time inside their head, more so than the average person who does not have depression, does not have anxiety. You guys know how people say ignorance is bliss? And you know how there's like stupid people out there, and the reason they're so happy is because they lack the intellectual capacity to have existential dread. And there's data to support this. There's a lot of data that shows that the higher your IQ is, the more likely you are to be depressed. Insight trial is a great example that shows that rapid insight, understanding the severity of your situation, correlates with suicidality. So there's people out there who are like dumb and happy. Part of the reason for that is because they do not internalize. They're like, they're like kind of like bots. They're like, hello. Like I'm envisioning like Oblivion NPCs where you like walk up to them and it's like they have no internal environment, right? They're like Oblivion NPCs. They just say the same thing over and over again and that's because they don't internalize. If you over internalize, you are prone to depression, you are prone to anxiety. One of the reasons that I think we have like this dating and mating crisis right now, apps will select for things that have nothing to do with relationship quality.
Exactly. It has to do with what you think is cool.
Absolutely, right?
Which is not good relationship down the road.
Yeah, so I'm the same way. So, you know, my wife and I had a conversation recently where like she wants me to like do more things that she likes. We're like completely different human beings. We don't like the same music, have different interests. Like I'm a gamer, she's super into tennis, and we would have never met on a dating app. This is kind of funny. The one thing we have in common, she's Indian, I'm Indian, is we both didn't want to end up with an Indian person. That's the only thing. That's the only thing we have in common when it comes to like our shared preferences for relationships. If you look at the science of it, sharing interests is not even in the top 5 of a successful relationship.
No. The hardest part is if I could go back and tell 24-year-old me is the things you're the most worried about when it comes to shared interest will be the thing that make your life as rich as it possibly can be later on.
Yeah,
right?
Oh yeah. This is a great comment. If you have an addiction, you are, and I say this as someone who struggled with addiction, you're like a little bit more screwed for the rest of your life. Understanding what an addiction is leads to depression. And it's not just addiction. So there's this great trial called the Insight trial where they were looking at people who had like bad diagnoses, things like ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, that's what Stephen Hawking had, you know, or like these other like Parkinson's and stuff like that. So these are like diagnoses that are bad for you. And what they discovered is the smarter someone is, the more insight they have, the more depressed they become. That is correct. That's what leads to depression. And that's why our job is to work through that depression on the other side. But like, this is so subtle, but it's fucked, really. Is like, oh yeah, I have this addiction, and if I realize that I have to resist it every day for the rest of my life, then I'm depressed. And it's like, yes. And does that suck? Is that fair? No. Does that make you even more depressed? When I say yes, you are correct. Once you realize what an addiction truly is, you will be more depressed. And here I am telling you that, and then you're like, oh my God, then I'm even more depressed, right? Because this guy is saying depression is inevitable. But here's the thing, all of these problems can be worked through. rude. And the biggest mistake that we make is that we think our life should be what we envision other people's lives to be. Other people don't struggle with addiction. They don't struggle with depression. Other people out there, and they're having a happy life. They get to do things freely, and sometimes the really thing is that's true. This is my experience as a psychiatrist. Not everyone has an equally crappy life, and things are drastically unfair. The question is, what are you gonna do about it?
Do you think that a lot of the attention on muscle building, on looks maxing, is actually just a safer discussion for young males? They can talk about trying to get body fat percentages, or they're doing like mewing for their jaw or something. I have a feeling there's a lot more going on.
The best way to run away from an unsolvable problem is to solve something else. Like, here's the thing about looks maxing. Getting somebody else to fall in love with me, like, that's so hard. I don't even know where to start. I don't even like myself. How am I supposed to get somebody else to fall in love with me? When I look in the mirror, I see disgust. I cannot fathom or tolerate the idea of going on a date and having this person look at this. So I'm going to transform myself. I'm going to solve all of those problems by solving one problem. I'm going to do a very interesting selection bias and cognitive bias, cognitive filtering, ignoring all of the beautiful people who are still single or divorced. And that's why, like, the more that they go into looks maxing, because there's this idea that if you're beautiful, right, and this is some really interesting theory of mine, when they look at the people that they're attracted to, in their mind, if someone's a 10 out of 10, I'd date them in a heartbeat. And if I date them, someone would date me. So I think this looks maxing thing is like a really great way of displacing all of our terrifying, overwhelming feelings of how do I get another human being to accept me. Job applications at JP Morgan are up 686,000% this morning. So for those of you that don't know, there was an alleged scandal, we don't know what's true or not, but there was a junior member at JP Morgan, a junior banker, who was basically repeatedly sexually assaulted by a woman who made all kinds of suggestive sexual remarks. I was on my friends and we were actually laughing about it on Discord, and I was like, this is not funny, right? But we're sort of like, it's so weird how much we've been programmed, where it's like the things that this senior female banker did to this junior banker is something that men would love to happen to them. They think that until they're actually in that situation. Doesn't feel good to be sexually predated, even though men will joke about it. They don't understand. They have no frame of reference, right? Thankfully, most of us don't have a frame of reference. We've never been sexually assaulted. But the idea of being forced to do all kinds of things to your relatively attractive female boss is something that men will joke about. Like, applications are up 700,000%. If you want to be good at life, you need to be able to face the unknown and go for it. Like, that's the skill. The intolerance to uncertainty is the transdiagnostic factor that leads to mental illness, that leads to OCD, that leads to anxiety. Oh my God, I don't know if he likes me or he doesn't like me. Let me ask him. Let me ask his friends. Let me ask his mom. Let me ask him again. Let me ask him again. He said yes the first 6 times, but maybe he's thinking no today. I don't know what's going to happen. Is my professor going to like it, or are they not going to like it? Let me beg. Let me plead. Let me cry. Let me do this. Let me make sure that they like it. That is the source of suffering. If you want to restart your life, you need to be able to tolerate the unknown. It's okay that it's the unknown. And here's the really crazy thing. The unknown is where the good stuff is. Let me explain this, okay? How did you end up in the position of being 26 years old and wanting to restart your life? What was the strategic meta that you were using? You were like, I'm going to figure out all the answers. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do everything right. I'm going to play it safe. And then you end up 26 years old. You've got a decent job. Maybe you make 100K, but you're like miserable every day. So this is the crazy thing. When you plunge into the unknown, this is not a bad thing. This is a great thing. See, if I decide ahead of time, hamburgers are my favorite food, I'm never going to try anything ever again. Like, that's a terrible way to live life. Instead, the right way to figure out what kind of food you want is to explore. There's uncertainty. The first time you try sushi, maybe you'll think it's disgusting. The first time you try oysters, maybe you'll think it's disgusting. That very uncertainty of that negative thing is the information that leads you to a fulfilling end. So here's the cool thing. You can't tell if someone is flirting with you, and that's the way that flirting is designed. There's a really cool experiment where they took 2 people who were flirting. They recorded them, and they had a neutral observer watch the people who were flirting. A neutral observer is only able to detect flirting 30% of the time. this is kind of confusing for people, but I think we need to understand what flirting is designed for. So a lot of times when we are into someone, that's like dangerous territory. We feel anxious, we're not sure how they're going to respond, and rejection really hurts. The way that human beings have learned to solve this, the way that we feel safe indicating our romantic interest, is by flirting. So flirting is sending a signal that is easily missed and potentially picked up. That's actually way safer than transmitting like a boorish signal, a creepy signal, like, you know, walking up to someone and saying, hey, I'm really into you, will you spend the rest of my life with me? That is really creepy. So flirting is actually designed to be missed. So if you're trying to flirt with someone and people are missing it, the best thing to do is to continue to try to flirt. I'd try like 2 or 3 more times and sort of send low signals, and then you can escalate a little bit. If it's really not working and you're interested in someone, you can be a little bit more explicit. But the whole point of flirting is that we want to send a signal that is a little bit ambiguous, and we don't want to put someone in a space to like reject us outright. So the cool thing about flirting is I send a signal, they're not quite sure what I mean by it, right? So when I invite them up for coffee, like it's not clear whether that means coffee or that means sex or what that means. And so then they send an ambiguous signal back. Oh yeah, I'd love to come up for coffee. Now in my mind, I'm not sure, is this person expecting coffee at 10:30 at night? Or are they expecting something else? And so this back and forth interaction that involves ambiguity is actually how people feel each other out, feel safe, and form emotional connections. So if you find yourself incompatible, should you work? Alrighty, chat, let's get started. Welcome to another Healthy Gamer GG stream. My name is Dr. Alok Kanoja. Just a reminder that everything we discuss on stream today is intended to be taken for educational purposes only. Nothing is intended to be taken as medical advice. If y'all have a concern or question, please go see a licensed professional. Hello, chat. I have returned. I was on vacation for a hot second. It was awesome. I spent some time in Europe, which I'm liking a lot. I think I love the United States, but man, Europe is amazing too. Yeah, it was really great. And I feel rested and invigorated. And it's great to be back. Super excited about the second half of 2026. Super excited about 2027. It's crazy. Like, we've been doing this for a while. And it's still going, you know? Let me just pull up chat real quick. Pop out chat link and Twitch. Let me make sure that you guys have this deal. Okay, this is active. Okay, so this should work. All right. Twitch Lords. Pop out chat. There we go. I love it when chat pops out, bruh. Okay. Yeah. How y'all doing? Hello, Laffy Bun. Good to see you again, my friend. Yeah. Do you still play Dota 2? Yeah, dude. I started playing Coddle. Dude, this hero is amazing. It's so much fun. You get to hit so many buttons. It's been 9 years single, living alone, no friends. I know I am ugly. I hope everyone here is doing good. God bless. It's hard to have a hard life and wish well on other people. Yeah. So just watch the positive thinking video. Good. I'm glad you liked it. I don't know exactly what's in that video, I must confess. It's been so long. No stun, I know. Listen, I said I was having fun. I didn't say I was winning games. That's the challenge in life, right? It's have fun or succeed. If only there was a way to do both. But nope, can't do both. You got to pick. Yeah, I spent some time in Austria and in Italy. Super cool. Austria and Italy. Love them both. Very cool. Yeah, okay. So we got some cool stuff to show y'all. So I don't know if you guys know this, but sometimes people will ask us, hey, does Dr. K have a video about XYZ? And there's a guy named Ridhome, who's from Indonesia, who like years ago made like an HG search engine. So we actually like collaborated with him finally, and he helped us. We've like integrated his search engine into our website, so you guys can search for, let's see, like puer, okay? And it'll show you guys like for any given thing, like the particular thing, and you can actually, it'll play the segments in the search engine. So if you guys are, because now we have like 5 or 6, oh, something's burning. There's something burning, chat. That's a lot of smoke. I think that should be okay. All right. Chat, will you let me know if a fire starts behind me? Thank you. Yeah, so if thank God I can see behind me, chat. Did that just happen or has that been going on? Okay, anyway. Life is full of surprises. No, it's not the roof. I think we're all right. It's just incense. We should be fine. But you never know. We'll find out. Such is life. So huge shout out to Ridhome. He's just a member of our community. And you guys can support him if y'all want. Ko-fi on Falfox. I believe we compensated him for this work and integration into our website. But if you guys want to support him directly, like that's huge because he helps people find content, which is what we want. Another quick announcement is, so we're now including Dr. K's Guide to Love, Sex, and Relationships with HG Coaching. So when we launched actually like Love Maxing, which I don't know if you guys saw, but like, the Guide to Love, Sex, and Relationships, we released, and then we did old school interviews for those of y'all that have been here for a while, just interviewing regular people about their experiences in the world. And so a lot of people have come into coaching specifically focused on relationships, and coaching is a program that I built because I thought that there's a lot of great stuff, great ways to help people accomplish their goals. And the crux of it is turning knowing into doing. And so it's got, I guess, 4.6 on Trustpilot with over 1,200 reviews. And so right now, if you guys sign up for coaching, you'll get Dr. K's Guide to Love, Sex, and Relationships. And as long as you're in coaching, you have access to it. I mean, you can watch it probably in the better part of a week. So if you guys are interested in, really understanding a lot more about how relationships form, how attraction works, how to solve problems in relationships, things like that, as well as getting some targeted support, sign up for coaching. Okay? Now, let's get to it. So this is what's I'm starting to detest the internet, chat, but I saw an interesting clip. Okay, hold on. So let me go ahead and, is this muted tab? I don't know if did you guys see this? Wait, why isn't this working? I don't hear anything. Hold on, chat. Why isn't this playing anything? Oh, it's muted. This is so interesting. You literally can't browse. It's muted. And I can't this is so fascinating. I'm going to keep warring with this for just a second. Man, the revenue must be really dropping. Okay, give me a second. Let me switch this over. Yeah, audio's not playing, so it's really interesting. So unless you log into X, you can't adjust. You can see a post, but like basic functionality on the website isn't. This is so interesting. Okay, so I'll have to open up a different tab, but that's okay. We will manage. Give me a second, chat. Give me a second, chat. Okay, I have signed up for Twitter. I've done it, chat, with great chagrin. Okay, it works now. Now I'm gonna get spammed with ads. Okay, let's just see if this works.
The cure.
Yeah. All right. Alas. Okay. I mean, it's fine. Okay, so I don't know if you guys saw this clip, but let's take a look.
And I hate to say it, but the cure for addiction, the only cure I've seen, and not like these fucking overpriced rehabs or a lot of these fraudulent fixes that are sold to people. They're good people who will support you. Alcoholics Anonymous, I think by and large, is a good organization. It's not the only one. The cure for addiction is suffering. You suffer enough that something inside you goes, I'm done. And I'm like lucky because I hit that point before I lost really the things that were the most important, which was not my career or money, but was my relationship with my kids. And when I felt as if it impacted them, I recognized it. It was the worst day of my life. I made amends. And for a while, I thought maybe this is temporary. Maybe this feeling is going to go away. But since that day, I swear to Christ, I have not ever wanted to drink once. And I hate to say it.
So, this is interesting, right? So we'll watch it again because I've been told that you guys like to hear things twice.
The cure for addiction, the only cure I've seen, and not like these fucking overpriced rehabs or a lot of these fraudulent fixes that are sold to people. They're good people who will support you. Alcoholics Anonymous, I think by and large, is a good organization. It's not the only one. The cure for addiction is suffering. You suffer enough that something inside you goes, I'm done. And I'm like lucky because I hit that point before I lost really the things that were the most important, which was not my career or money, but was my relationship with my kids. And when I felt as if it impacted them, I recognized it. It was the worst day of my life. I made amends. And for a while, I thought maybe this is temporary. Maybe this feeling is going to go away. But since that day, I swear to Christ, I have not ever wanted to drink once. And I hate to say it.
Okay, so this is fascinating. So when I was a second-year resident at Mass General Hospital, I would hear this from my patients. So sometimes you have a patient who comes in who's got like heart disease, or they're in the emergency room with like hypertensive crisis or something like that. And they'll say something like, and people will say like, you know, when overcoming addiction, like enough is enough. One day you wake up and enough is enough. And you've suffered enough at that point. And once you've suffered enough, the cure for addiction is suffering. And so then I'd be like, what happens on that day? How do you wake up one day and you say to yourself, enough is enough? Because if this is the solution to addiction, to wake up one day and enough is enough, how do we get people to consistently do that? Right? Because I was like, how does this work? Because my patients would be like, enough is enough. So I started looking at some research. This is from years ago. So this is MGH, Harvard Medical School, where I trained. And one of the shocking things that I learned in residency, I was there from 2014 to 2018, was that over 50% of people who overcome addiction do so without any medical intervention. So most people are solving this problem on their own. And Ben Affleck talks about these overpriced rehabs, which I agree with to a certain degree. So the sad truth, if you look at these high-priced rehabs, is many of them have a business model of recurring customers. And I know people will sort of say this about like medical professionals, and it's like, yeah, we want to keep people sick, and like that's how we make money. I've seen two kinds. I've worked at several rehabs, 3, and I've seen 2 different kinds of rehabs. There are those that practice evidence-based treatment and really try to help people get sober. Those can be amazing. And there are those that give people basically a 30-day vacation. And the key thing is the aftercare plan. So what are you going to do to maintain sobriety when you leave? And what I noticed is a lot of these rehabs are very, very, very amazing while you're there, and then they have no aftercare plan. And they sort of have a good justification for it. They're like, look, our job is these 30 days, not what happens afterward. But the question still remains, how do you get to enough is enough? Like, how do you do that, right? Because if that's the answer, waking up one day and you say, you know, enough is enough. I've been wasting 10 years of my life sitting at home, playing video games, watching porn. Enough is enough. Now I'm going to do something with my life. Alcohol's about to ruin my life. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. How do you get there? How do you reproduce that? And this is where I learned something really fascinating as I was trying to figure out, how do I find this point with my patients? One of the biggest mistakes I see people make, especially today on the internet, don't confuse a lack of progress with a lack of progress. So this is just the way that the brain works. So in 1983, there was something called the Libet or Libert experiment. Okay? This is one of these experiments. I don't know if you guys are following any of these debates around free will, but basically a bunch of neuroscientists are like, free will doesn't exist. By the time you think you make a decision, your brain has been making lots of calculations without your knowledge. Your brain makes a decision, and then you become aware of it. You think you're making the decision, but you're not making the decision. And so the simplest experiment of this is, they took people and they said, there's a button, and then you hit the button. All the experiment is you hit it with your right hand or you hit it with your left hand. That's it. And they ask people, let us know when you decide which hand to use. And so you say, okay, I've decided right hand, and you hit the button. They say, okay, I've decided left hand, and you hit the button. You just do that a bunch of times. And while you're doing this experiment, you have electrodes hooked up to your head. And what scientists were able to predict is which decision you would make. They can detect about 500 milliseconds before you make a decision, which decision you're going to make. So they can tell you whether you're going to pick right hand or left hand by measuring the electrical activity in the brain. So here's a key thing that a lot of people don't understand. When you go through life, you're doing something, nothing's working. You say, I'm stuck. The problem has not been solved. In Ben Affleck's case, struggling with alcohol addiction for who knows how many years, hasn't solved the problem. What hasn't solved the problem? One day he wakes up and he says, enough is enough. And this is one of the biggest problems kind of with the internet and with human beings in general, is we overvalue. Actually, let me show you guys this first. Okay, so I saw this. I don't know what the veracity of this is. This was like just an infographic on that I found on Reddit. Okay, so you have to be a little bit careful. So the Libet experiment, I can absolutely attest to. This is correct. But I think this infographic does a good job of showing how decisions get made. So there's like information, there's emotions, bodily sensations, memories, associations, values, goals, context. All this stuff gets integrated. And then we hit a certain threshold, and then we make a decision. Right? But there are all of these variables that go into this decision. And this is kind of what this is like. So the way that I describe this is when you say enough is enough, how does your brain decide? I'd say it's kind of like picking a tomato. Right? So if I go to my friend and I say, hey, how do you get a tomato? And he says, you go outside and you pluck tomatoes, and then you have tomatoes. This is in medicine what we call the proximal cause, the final step before the outcome happens. So how do you wake up one day and decide enough is enough, right? That's like going outside and picking the tomato. The problem with the internet is that there is an overwhelming emphasis on proximal causes. So this clip of Ben Affleck, 60 seconds, has 19 million views. So everyone's looking at this and thinking to themselves, I just need to wake up and one day say enough is enough. That's like saying, how do you find tomatoes? You go outside and you pluck them. But the process to reproduce that is not go outside and pluck them. It's plant a seed, till the soil, plant a seed, water it every day. Tons of actions that result in 0 tomatoes. And then finally, the last step 99 to 100, the final step you take is take the tomato. That's what Ben Affleck is talking about. Enough is enough. And this is what's so confusing about this is when people watch this, right? We think, I want to reproduce this. How do I wake up and say to myself, enough is enough? How do I do that? How do I find it's enough suffering, right? That's, he says, I suffered enough. That's not actually correct. There is so much more that went into this. Because here's the thing. He went to all these fancy rehabs, right? Got all this addiction treatment, did Alcoholics Anonymous. Hold on a second. What is the influence of all the psychotherapy that he did for 30 days while he was there? Whatever amount of aftercare he got, whatever amount of AA meetings that he did, the internal reflections that he did, laying awake at night, taking a walk in the morning, going for a swim, working out with someone, talking to somebody else, where does all of that factor in? And this is the problem, right? So if you are struggling with something and you are looking at someone talking on the internet, myself included, and they're like, this is the way, you need to understand that there's 1,000 inputs that will result in enough is enough. And so the biggest mistake that I see people make is confusing a lack of progress with a lack of progress. Just because you don't have tomatoes in your hand does not mean that you're actually progressing. And this is what makes this so hard. Because what's happening in your brain is you are investing effort, right? I till the soil, I plant a seed, I water it for 10 days. I've put in a bunch of effort, 0 yield. Then put in water for another 10 days, 0 yield. Then you water one day and you get tomatoes. You water one day and you get tomatoes. Now I'm watering over 10 days and I get 100 tomatoes. So the tricky thing is that when we are outcome focused, which is the bias that everybody on the internet has, right? They're like, here's how you make a $100 million YouTube channel. Here's how you write a best-selling novel. Here's how you do this. Here's how outcome. Here's how you get laid with bitches. Here's how you do this, follow this plan. It's not how it works. Right? And the crazy thing, he says, enough is enough. How do you define enough? What amount of suffering? That someone's subjective experience of something is not the same as a data-driven approach to understand how to cultivate that final action. And so when it comes to addiction, like I'll give you guys a couple of examples, right? So if you want to get to the point of enough is enough, here's a super high level view. First thing that you need, which he actually talks about, is a competing interest. This is what a lot of people don't realize. They're like, oh, I need to stop. How do I stop? Everyone's focused on the behavior. You don't need, focusing on the behavior is important. It's one piece of the puzzle. But the drive is very important, right? The motivation is very important. You have to have a good enough reason to stop. And this is where things get tricky and fun. Because if you're struggling with something, you may say to me, Dr. K, I know I need to stop. This is ruining my life. I've been stuck at home for 10 years. Pornography addiction is ruining my life. I have erectile dysfunction. I've never been on a date or whatever, whatever. And all of these things are bad. This is all ruining my life. I don't want those things. This is really important to me, except it's all a scam run by your mind. Right? So this is simply how motivation works. Right? Your brain has competing interests. It's like, I want to do this. I don't want to do this. And this was so fascinating as a psychiatrist. When people come into my office and they say, yeah, the addiction is ruining my life, and they consciously give me 10 reasons, none of those are where the money is. That is actually misdirection done by their unconscious mind to keep them away from what really hurts. It's almost like, I don't know if this makes sense. It's almost like a script. Oh yeah, this addiction is destroying my life. It's destroying this. It's destroying this. It's destroying this. It's destroying this. But what really bothers them is if I stop, I have to face the guilt of having screwed up the last 10 years of my life. It's not that I want to build my life, I want to build my life, but oh my God, I hate myself because now I've wasted 10 years of my life. I should have conquered this earlier, I could have conquered this earlier, but I didn't do it, and I can't tolerate that. So instead, I look somewhere else. And anytime you have something bad in your life that your mind ruminates on over and over and over again, see, this is what people don't understand. Rumination, you think, oh, I want to stop thinking these thoughts. I want to stop thinking these thoughts. Everything in your body and your mind has a function. What is the function of rumination? As long as we keep chewing on this thing 1,000 times, we won't look at other things. And what's really fascinating about this is if you look at rumination and you try to focus on other things, your brain will shift back. And what I sort of noticed as a psychiatrist is the closer we got to the answer, the harder the rumination would trigger and the more the person would snap back, because that's what they're trying to avoid. So the first thing that you need is a competing interest. You need a reason that is good enough to stop. And a lot of people will say, oh my God, but I've ruined my life. I want these things. Last 10 years. Okay, for 3,650 days, you've been stuck. What's the cost of 3,651? Stop tomorrow. What's the big deal? Right? It's not a big deal. Like, it's not like tomorrow is something special. You already thrown 3,650 days into the toilet. Why not throw away 3,651? 52, 53, 54? Does it really make that big of a difference? It's like less than a 1% additional cost. These are the scams that your mind runs on you, and you need a competing interest. You need a reason to stop, something that is more important than whatever the addiction gives you. Second thing, generally speaking, that you need, in order for something to be addictive, it requires two things: the ability to give pleasure and the ability to take away pain. Something really important to understand, biologically, biologically doesn't even sound right. With human beings, you can't take something away, you have to replace it. So in your life, if you're trying to stop gaming, not going to work. You have to replace it with something. You can pause something for a little while, but until you have a sustainable replacement, the behavior will just reemerge, because if the behavior is designed to solve a problem, right? So if someone is poor and hungry, I can get them to stop stealing for a day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. But unless they have some way to get food, they're going to go back to stealing. They're going to go back to what they know, which is why we have a bunch of data about how, throwing someone in jail usually does not reduce recidivism. So throwing someone in jail for 10 years doesn't stop them from doing crimes when they get out, for most people. I don't know, technically most is right. That implies greater than 50%, but that's absolutely true. That giving someone an alternative is how you prevent recidivism. Okay? So you need a competing interest. And when it comes to the addiction, the biggest thing that I find that people need is an alternate way to deal with negative emotions. Because over time, when you're addicted to something, the pleasure that the addiction gives you starts to develop a tolerance. And so this idea behind heroin use and chasing the dragon is that the first time you use heroin, it's amazing. And every subsequent time you are chasing that first experience, you're looking for a repeat of that, but it's never going to come again. And you keep looking and you keep looking and you keep looking. And the more you play, the less fun you have. Right? Dota 2, League of Legends, Valorant, take your pick. Like, there's nothing that beats WoW Classic. And in order to try to recapture the glory days of WoW Classic, what do? They re-release WoW Classic. Do we make new video games anymore? No, we remaster old ones. because we're all chasing the dragon when it comes to the gaming industry. Back in the good old days when we had physical discs and people made games with heart and spirit without microtransactions. Back in the days when games were good. Give me that. So if you are trying to overcome an addiction, you need a way to deal with your negative emotions. So sometimes something like therapy works well for this. Meditation works well for this. And generally speaking, those 50% of people who overcome addictions without, therapy or anything like that, they're still discovering alternate ways. So I would bet you money that if you ask Ben Affleck when you're having a bad day 15 years ago, what are the things that you used to do to take care of yourself? And today, what are the things that you do to take care of yourself? And I'm sure you will find all manner of daily or weekly emotional things that they do. So emotional regulation is critical because when your brain starts to feel that negative emotion, it needs that emotion to go away. And if the best answer that you've got is the addictive substance, that's what you're going to use. So when I work with people with pornography addiction, people think that it's about sex. They think it's about lust. It's not. It's about emotional regulation. Porn is really good at numbing the negative emotions in your brain. So you have to develop that. And here's the tricky thing, right? So don't confuse a lack of progress with a lack of progress. If you start meditating every day, if you do Nadi Shuddhi Pranayam and Kapalbhati and Manipura Chakra Sadhana to digest and emotionally process and emotionally regulate all this stuff, you'll do that stuff for 90 days and you'll still be addicted. And so you'll look at all this meditation that you're doing and you'll say, it didn't solve the problem. It's a waste of time. Don't confuse a lack of progress with lack of progress. Third thing that all addicts have to do, and this is probably in some ways the hardest and in some ways the easiest, they have to change their environment. What a lot of people don't understand is people think addiction is a moral failing. But what we now know is that addiction is an environmental disease. Everyone's like, oh, I'm genetically predisposed and all this stuff. This is fascinating. Okay? So how permanent was Vietnam drug addiction? Let's see. Okay. So 43% of people, U.S. soldiers in Vietnam, used narcotics, okay? 34% of people were using heroin. And when they came back, that number dropped to 7%. See, we think that an addiction is something that is inside you. An addiction is a genetic vulnerability that meets an environment. So these rates dropped. And it's not like, let me tell you guys, I wasn't alive back then, but I got to say, if you guys think these soldiers coming back from Vietnam were getting platinum level Massachusetts General Hospital, Harvard Medical School level of addiction care when they came back, you'd be surprised they didn't get shit. They didn't get any care. And the number drops astronomically. Okay? Right? So post-Vietnam narcotic use for those first addicted in Vietnam. So 65% of, I don't know if this is general sample 451. This may be 90. This could be a number. Yeah, this is a number. So of the 90 people, 65 quit all narcotics. 33 continued to use without any addiction. And only 2 out of the 90 that developed an addiction still had addiction. Like, this is insane. Right? So we have this idea that, addiction is a moral failing. Not true. Then we've got all this neuroscience. Genetics. Not your fault, bro. Not your fault. The truth of the matter is that addiction is an environmental illness. Right? And this is the most striking. When I learned this particular set, I'm sure there's different data here and there, but I think this is like really cool because this is when we learned this. We're like, hold on a second. 90 people were addicted to narcotics in Vietnam. And when we came back, only 2 of them were? I could have misinterpreted the table a little bit, but the broader point still stands. So if you have an addictive behavior, and this is the challenge, right? So this is like the hard part, is like people watch me on the internet and you think, oh, Dr. K, like in these four walls, teach me something that I can change about myself so that in this environment, I can be different within the environment. And I will do that. I've tried to do that. We're going to do that some today, right? Because we have to play the hand that we're dealt. Not all of y'all have the opportunity to move across country to wherever and change your environment. So there are certain things that you can do internally within an environment, and that most important environment is this here. See, we think that our body and our mind are us. They're not us. They're the environment in which we exist. Right? Your body is your most basic form of environment. Your mind is the most basic, most proximal environment. Technically, right? Because your mind does things and then you have to deal with the consequences of sunshine or rain or clouds or thunderstorms in your own head. So if you are trying to overcome an addiction, the environment needs to change. Your friend group needs to change. If you are addicted to alcohol and you're part of a fraternity where you guys go to bars all the time and you have frat parties all the time, really hard to kick the addiction. That's a huge part of what Alcoholics Anonymous offers. Because what do people in AA do? They grind meetings. Why do they grind meetings? Because while you're grinding a meeting, you're not grinding your bar tab. So as you change your environment, the strength of the addiction will start to weaken. And it's not any one of these things, right? These are the three core things that I try to do with all of my patients who have an addiction. Why? What's the competing interest? Number two, how are we going to manage your emotions? And number three, how are we going to change your environment, which includes things like triggers? Are we going to stop going to happy hour, stop going to bars, find a new friend group, pick up frisbee golf, go to the dog park? You're going to get a dog and you're going to start going to the dog park. Huge. And as you implement these things, one day you will wake up and your mind will say, enough is enough. And you'll think, I have done it. Okay? Questions? I see there's a comment about your mind is your environment. Okay. What do you guys think about that? And someone's asking, but what if your mind is the messed up environment? Okay. Will such a day surely arrive as long as the person keeps working towards it, or are they forever prone to relapse? Excellent question. So, I unfortunately am human, which means that I cannot predict the future with certainty. So, will a day surely arrive? I can't say. Right? And it's so scary how we want assurances. Are they forever prone to relapse? I think practically the best way to stay sober is to realize that you could relapse today. See, the moment you let your guard down is when the addiction can squeeze in. The people who feel like they have the best control over their addiction usually have the worst outcomes with related to their addiction. The moment that you accept this is going to be a battle for the rest of your life. Hi, my name is Alok, and I'm an alcoholic. My last drink was 35 years ago. So AA figured this out. Now, on a practical perspective, I do think that people don't have the same cravings for the rest of their life. So there's like short-term, medium-term, and long-term changes to addiction. So cravings are super intense for like, a couple of weeks, continue to be intense for a couple of months. And then this gets a bit complicated, but like the reason, let me think about how to explain this. So when you have a substance as part of your life, it isn't just the behavior of the substance. Your whole life gets shaped by the substance. I'm not saying it revolves around it. Your friends are revolved around the substance. Your romantic relationships can be involved around the substance. I'll give you all a simple example. I had a patient who is an alcoholic, also married to another alcoholic, and basically they hooked up when they were drunk, and they would have, beers or wines or whatever, and then they'd get frisky. And so their sexual relationship was sort of like predicated on beer goggles. And so even the person that they married, right, they were like functional alcoholics, both very successful. But then the problem is, like, once one of them got sober, like, their sexual relationship basically tanked. And so the tricky thing about sobriety is that you have to reshape so many parts of your life. And I would say, there's post-acute withdrawal, there are genetic changes and things like that. I think I see cognitive improvement from people who use substance use 1 to 2 years after sobriety. Right? So even a year or 2 years, like, people are still feeling better. And then you start to reshape your environment. But I would say, like, somewhere between 2 and 5 years is really when people, like, no longer deal with it on a daily basis. So practically, I don't think you're going to be struggling with it forever. But you have to be really careful, because the addictive mind in your head, the moment it latches onto, oh yeah, you don't have to struggle for this forever, it's like, ha. Yeah, you've conquered it, bro. It's 18 months. It's 2 years and 1 day. This is outside the window. Dr. K said you're fine, bruh. It's okay. You've conquered it. Look, give yourself a pat on the back. Let's have a drink to celebrate, baby. You're in control. Right? So unless you have awareness of this kind of thing, it's better to say, hey, it's never going to get better. It's a constant struggle. And it's not never going to get better. It'll never be fixed. Yeah, 2.5 years. Feeling great. How do we find a good environment? Great question. You look. Right? So I'd start by saying, make a change. Doesn't matter what the change is. And then let your internal compass. So this is a big problem. People are like, how do I know what's good? How do I find the good thing? You find the good thing by looking. And I know it sounds simple, but literally what I mean is, like, if you think about how do you find your favorite food, you have to try a lot of foods. So I think somewhere along the way we shifted. And I think this is a big part of this is the creation of the internet and the advent of the internet. I have to find the right answer. Finding the right answer, finding the right environment is an issue of finding, not discovering. Reframe to, how do I discover the right environment? You have to go looking. Try hanging out with these people, try hanging out with these people, try hanging out with these people. See, what we've really done, what's really scary is we have outsourced our internal guiding compass to experts, to influencers, to content creators. The answer is out there. There's so much science, man. So much science, dude. I just need to find the right answer. No, you need to discover the right answer. Because in science, we have this really annoying thing with scientific studies called generalizability or external validity, which means whatever you discover in a study does not translate to the real world 100%. Most of the time, it doesn't even translate 50%. So good examples of this is like, drug adherence. There's a really great trial on bipolar disorder called STEP BD. And STEP BD is something called a naturalistic study. So we normally think about the best clinical trials as something called a randomized controlled trial. So this is randomized and it's controlled, right? So we've got group A, control group, group B, intervention group. We're studying these people. They're coming to the clinic every day. We're going to give them their medicine. We're going to check the blood levels. We're going to do everything. Highly controlled environment. And what you discover is that olanzapine is a great drug for bipolar disorder. Olanzapine is a second-generation antipsychotic, really works well for bipolar disorder. One of the most effective medications. So one of the 3 FDA-approved combinations for treatment of bipolar disorder, one of them is fluoxetine, olanzapine, a combination of the two. Fluoxetine is an antidepressant, which fixes the depression part of bipolar disorder. Olanzapine prevents the mania. So it's like, we have found it. Fluoxetine, olanzapine will help, will fix. Works great in a clinical trial. Doesn't work great in the real world. You know why? Any of y'all on olanzapine? Has anyone here taken olanzapine? Curious what y'all's experiences were. Lithium is one of them too. Very good. Olanzapine hunger can be tough. You know what the problem is with olanzapine? Makes people gain like 30 pounds or more. So it's fine in a clinical trial. Olanzapine works great. Side effects of metabolic derangement, absolutely. Right? Used to got chubby. And here's the thing. When it comes to people with bipolar disorder, their life is hard enough. The last thing that they need is 40 extra pounds. So this is the problem of external validity. And this is why, it's hard to practice medicine algorithmically. Because human beings don't respond the way that subjects in a clinical trial do. These damn human beings care about not gaining 40 pounds. What the hell is wrong with them? Right? Yeah, medication is a big reason. Now, this would be interesting. This would be really interesting. I'm really curious about how something like Ozempic would intersect with olanzapine. Actually, I'm so curious about this. We're going to actually just see olanzapine, Ozempic. Ooh, let's learn together, chat. This would be huge, y'all, if this works. On metabolic disturbances and clozapine treated, that's another thing that causes huge weight gain. Oral olanzapine to treat with schizophrenia. Let's see. Abstract. Okay. So clozapine and olanzapine are some of the most effective antipsychotics, but both are associated with weight gain and relevant metabolic disturbances, okay? Non-pharmacologic behavioral interventions have limited effects counteracting these adverse effects. Semaglutide, blah, blah, blah. We will investigate the long-term effects of add-on treatment with semaglutide once a week versus placebo. Oh, this is a protocol. So this study hasn't finished yet. Okay. Damn it. I thought we found it. So they're doing this. Good. Let's see. Oh, here we go. This could be good. With diagnosis have been treated with olanzapine, showed significant improvement in glucose tolerance. Okay. But how much? How much? Okay. Clozapine treated with liraglutide experienced a reduction in HbA1c from 10% to 6.5. That's huge. Total weight loss of 7.7 kgs. That's also pretty big. 8.7% weight reduction after 2 years and decreased insulin requirements. Okay, this is solid, chat. This is real solid. 16 obese patients with schizophrenia treated with liraglutide, of which 14 were on clozapine. Clozapine is another heavy hitter. We don't see effect sizes. You guys got to be careful about this. It went down, but it doesn't say how much. See, this is sneaky. They say it went down, but they didn't say how much. Okay, chat. I gotta say, this is important. I mean, this is huge for psychiatry. Because a lot of our medications cause a lot of weight gain. And so adding Ozempic onto it, adding semaglutide, well, this was liraglutide. By the way, they're not all the same. All the GLP-1 agonists are not made the same. So they're not interchangeable. They each have their own profiles. But this could be big for psychiatry. There's already some usage. We uploaded a video a couple weeks ago about GLP-1 agonists and addictions. So there's some benefit for addiction. But it seems like behavioral addictions like pornography addiction may get worse. So be careful, chat. Stay safe out there. Okay. I gotta do this Twitter thing again. Okay. Hold on. Let me just check while I'm loading the Twitter. The tweet.
Tell yourself, I will write.
No, quiet, you. Let me just check in with chat before we move on. I can't go a day without sweets. Yes, you can. You don't want to. Okay. All right. The Zempic. Love it. Okay, let's move on. Still can't open Twitter properly? You're damn right, dude. I take that trade any day of the week. So this person's joking, graduated from Harvard. I mean, I did residency there, med school at Tufts, and it still can't open Twitter properly. I'm going to tell you guys something straight up. If I had not learned how to quit the internet, if I had not become incompetent on the internet, I would have never gotten into med school, graduated from med school, let alone win sufficient awards to get accepted to Harvard for residency. Being incompetent on the internet is one of the best skills you can have. Best outcome. Just, hey, not knowing how to use social media. Because if you don't know how to use social media, that means you're not on social media. And if you're not on Twitter, that means that my brain is not going to be rotted as much, because there's an overwhelming amount of research that hours spent on the internet, algorithmic internet is the worst, will radicalize you, will start to rot your brain. We also have numerous studies now that AI usage, which is the newest thing. Oh, you're not competent in AI. You're damn right I'm not competent in AI. The more competent in AI I become, the worse my critical thinking skills become. Not saying that you should not use AI, but if someone were to say, would you rather be competent at Twitter or train at Harvard Medical School, I would say I pick option B. Doctor, just the Scarlet Rot. Oh my God, Scarlet Rot is such a great analogy for the internet. I'll take option A, which is fine. I knew that some of y'all would. Which is fine. Okay.
If you tell yourself, I will write down 100 times something about yourself, that writes it into the neurofrontal cortex at such a deep level that your brain will start reconciling you to that. I was terrified of public speaking until I just sat down for like a week, and every day I spent like 10 minutes just writing that I like public speaking. I love public speaking.
You wrote that down?
Yeah, and a week later, and I knew it's not, this works when you know what you're doing. It's not like a placebo. It's actually like you just actively change your neurofrontal cortex. So I use this often. I sort of write to myself, message in a bottle.
You write messages to yourself?
Yeah.
Affirmations or just?
No, it's just like when I feel like something is like, there's something I figured out that I really like. I know I have to write a scheduled message to myself to remember it, because like I need spaced repetition on the idea. If you...
You guys want to watch
Tell
that again?
yourself or write down 100 times something about yourself that writes it into the neurofrontal cortex at such a deep level that your brain will start reconciling you to that. I was terrified of public speaking until I just sat down for like a week, and every day I spent like 10 minutes just writing that I like public speaking. I love public speaking.
You wrote that down?
Yeah, and a week later, and I knew it's not, this works when you know what you're doing. It's not like a placebo. It's actually like you just actively change your neurofrontal cortex. So I use this often. I sort of write to myself, message in a bottle.
You write messages to yourself?
Yeah.
Affirmations or just...
No, it's just like when I feel like something is like, there's something I figured out that I really like, I have to write a scheduled message to myself to remember it, because like I need spaced repetition on the idea.
Okay. What do y'all think about this? Thoughts? Do y'all think that if you're afraid of public speaking and you just write it 10 times a day for a week, that you're programming? Right? So a lot of people, I tried, it didn't work. Some people like neuroplasticity. Yeah. So I love this stuff. So I'm going to ask you guys a question. So this is why I like science. Okay. So back when before I went to med school, I was gallivanting around the mountains, the Himalayas, and wandering across ashrams. And I encountered someone who was like, hey, this guy had cancer. And he went to an ashram, he meditated, he learned to play a flute. And what he did was play the flute every day for 4 days, and cancer was cured. And so here's the tricky thing. You may say that sounds like BS. I'm not saying it's BS. I mean, it could have happened. Maybe the flute cured cancer. The issue of science is reproducibility. So here's what bothers me about things like this. So here's a person, Toby, who's the CEO of Shopify, founder of Shopify, who says, hey, if you do this thing, actually, he doesn't say that. He says, I did this thing and I transformed my fear of public speaking. Now I love it. I just wrote this thing to myself 10 times. My question is, what is the reproducibility of it? If human beings on the planet write something to themselves 10 times every day for a week, will their fears disappear? Is it that simple? And the answer is, I don't think so. Okay? So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to do a really simple scientific kind of like, not experiment, but just, I'm going to ask y'all. So what we're going to do is look at Tobias Lutke's Wikipedia page. And I'm going to ask you guys a question. Of the variables that we look at, which of the following do you think if we duplicate this thing again, which one do you think has the biggest impact on overcoming a fear of public speaking? Okay. Early life. Born in Germany, received a personal computer at the age of 6, rewriting code for games he played at the age of 11 or 12, graduated from school and entered an apprentice program, became a computer programmer after the 10th grade, lived in Ottawa, home of his parents-in-law, Bruce and Dale, who were federal public servants, provided seed capital for his startup, et cetera, et cetera. So which of these variables, writing something in a journal 10 times a day for a week, or being given a gift, being supported professionally, being supported financially, being encouraged professionally. I have an idea to start a company. Like I have this idea of self-agency and determination, right? Like I can shape the world, and then the universe shows up and they're like, hey, here's a pile of capital. Go do your thing, brah. I'm not saying the guy isn't amazing. And this is what kind of bothers me about like why I don't like advice from successful people. Because the advice from the successful people almost never takes into account the variables that are actually responsible for the change. Right? So this is the problem. It's like if you listen to advice for successful people, a simple example is myself. I applied to medical school 120 times over the course of 3 years. And if I tell you, hey, if you want to go to med school, you keep applying and keep applying and keep applying until you make it. That advice doesn't work for you. You know why? Because my parents are both doctors. Because when I had to pay $10,000 a year to just apply to medical school and fly around for interviews or fill out applications, I had mommy and daddy paying for it. Your mileage may vary. My strategy won't work for you. So if you guys want to know how to actually rewire your brain, let's understand a couple of things. So this guy says, I sat down and I wrote, I'm not afraid of public speaking. I love public speaking, whatever, for 10 days. I want you guys to think about the cognitive work that happens before you sit down. Did he just wake up on Monday morning at 6 a.m. and say, oh, this is a random thing, let me just reprogram myself? Or is this something that he had struggled with for years? As he developed, he was like, oh, this is a problem, this is a problem, I struggle with it, I wish I wasn't this way. Is this something, are there other things in his life that he struggled with that then he intentionally focused on? He's like, hey, I'm going to solve this problem. Is he gifted, experienced, call it whatever you want, at taking something that does not work in his life, addressing it with his focus, energy, and attention, and then that thing gets fixed? So I think the key thing here is it's not the final action that is responsible for the change. I want you guys to imagine if you're the CEO of Shopify and you're afraid of public speaking, all of the moments that go into the drive, the energy, the desire to no longer fear public speaking, all the struggles he's had, all of the times he's been anxious before he goes up. That's where the money is. Right? And this is why you guys have to be really careful about even taking advice from people like myself, because, you know, the way that you play a hand of cards, right? The way that you bet in a poker hand is contextual. So part of what we try to do on this channel is not teach you what to do. Do this thing and it will work. Reproduce these actions and you will get the same results. That's not what we try to do, because I just don't think it works, right? I learned this lesson the hard way. Like, I tried to do it the other way and it just doesn't work. IMO. I could be wrong, right? It's because even that conclusion is based on my perception of it. Interesting. Okay. So what I'm going to teach y'all now is, if you guys want to know how to rewire on a most fundamental level, here's my understanding of it. Okay? So let's take something like fear of public speaking. And this can be divided into two things. And broadly, this is rewire your thinking. So how do you actually rewire your thinking? And hey, I'm all for it. If you guys want to try just writing affirmations to yourself for 10 minutes a day for a week and give it a shot. See your mileage, you could work. I could be wrong. This guy could be right. I mean, he's the CEO of Shopify. I'm just some fucknut on the internet. So maybe he's right and I'm wrong. It's worth considering. So if you want to know how to rewire your thinking, there are two things to understand. What goes in and what comes out. This is the first thing. Okay, now this may sound kind of confusing, so let me explain. Let's take the example of public speaking. When I'm trying to speak in public, as I approach that situation, something bubbles up within me, right? Fear. What will people think? So that is what is coming out of my mind. That can be modified. Does that kind of make sense? So the fear starts somewhere in here and then comes up. So we can address the process of something coming up and manifesting in a particular way, and we can really train what goes in. Okay? And this guy's focusing on what goes in. He's like, if you repeat this 10 times a day for a week, it'll work. So let's talk about what goes in. So how do you implant things into your mind? Basic thing to understand. The mind has activity. Okay? The greater the activity, the more stuff bounces off if you try to put it in. So if I'm trying to study chemistry, okay, and my mind is distracted, I'm not going to learn. If my mind is focused and I'm studying chemistry, this will go in. Right? So if we look at medications like stimulant medications, what does a stimulant medication do? A stimulant medication turns your mind from this into this. Things sink into a focused mind. And since things sink into a focused mind, that's why we get traumatized. Okay? Let's understand this. So if you have low self-esteem and you think to yourself, oh my God, I'm a terrible human being. I suck. I'm a loser. Let's think about what was the state of your mind when you learned that. So for me, when I was getting my ass bullied and beat or whatever on the playground at school, my mind was not distracted. I remember the feeling of like I would go out onto the playground and I'd like play around the edges. I'd stay away from the high value playground objects. There was like trees around, so I'd just like walk around the trees in the back until my bullies were occupied. And once they were occupied, if the seesaw or the swings or whatever were open, like I would go over there and play. And then if they caught me, they would form a ring around me. And when they form a ring around me, I'm not distracted. Do you guys get that? My mind is laser focused on the bullies. And then whatever they say sinks in. So the reason trauma, like the mechanism of trauma is distracted mind, environment focuses mind. Once the mind is focused, whatever they put in, this guy talks about rewiring your frontal lobes. That I don't even understand. That doesn't make sense to me. Beliefs, I don't think exist in the frontal lobes, but that's neither here nor there. The mind becomes laser focused and then you absorb whatever is happening to you. But it's not just trauma, right? Good things can happen that way as well. Like, you can be crying and thinking like, oh my God, I'm such a loser, and your crush walks up to you, and then you're laser focused, and your crush says, baby, I love you. It breaks my heart to see, and he or she doesn't say they love you. It breaks my heart to see you suffering. What can I do to help? And it's like, oh my God, like that sinks in, like, oh, it feels so good. I feel amazing. Everything is possible in life. Let's go. Right? So this is important to understand. You can control what goes into your mind. And the simplest way to control it is by altering your focus. The more distracted you are, the less things sink in. The more focused you are, the more they sink in. And now we get to something really interesting. Maybe he's right. So it's not the fact that he's writing. What is his focus? How is he prepared for this? This is when he sits down and he's like, this is it, baby. I can do this. I no longer fear writing. If his focus is laser focused, and he says this to himself, it can work. That is the idea behind the sankalpa in Yoga Nidra. So in some meditative techniques, what we actually do is attain a very, 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 very still level of mind, as close to completely empty as we can. And then we just put one drop in. And when one drop goes in, that's what's tricky, is the moment that sankalpa is a resolve or something that you kind of repeat to yourself, but it's not the number of times you repeat, it is repeating it once, twice, or 3 times when you are in a very, very, very still state of mind. And that reprograms really well. I've used it a lot with my patients. And we're talking about people who are in their 60s, who have had years of narcissistic abuse, who have really low self-esteem. hard to say that this is what cures them. It doesn't cure, but we're also doing psychotherapy and there may be medication involved. And so everything kind of goes together. So I'm not saying that Sankalpa is like the only thing. There are some people who are super pro yoga and anti-psychiatry will say Sankalpa can solve everything. I personally think that that could be true, but until I see the data to support that, I can't say that. Key thing though is the more inactive your mind is, the more flat your mind is, the more things will go in. So other interesting example of this is dissociation. So oftentimes when I talk to my patients who are dissociating, what they'll tell me is they'll hyper focus on like neutral things. So if something bad is happening to them, all they can see is like some picture out of a window. They're like looking out the window and that's all they see. So they fill their mind up with this benign thing while the bad thing is happening to them in an effort to protect their mind. So we even see it in dissociation. So still your mind, then things will go in. And we know this, right? Because if you're distracted, if you're like trying to learn calculus in a burning building, like not going to work great. If you're trying to learn calculus and someone is like coughing or like farting or like whatever, if you're trying to learn calculus and there's some guy on the internet who's streaming about how it's hard to learn calculus and you're trying to do that while you're studying calculus, not going to work. Focused mind allows things to go in. So he could have done that. Second thing, what comes out? This is something that we talk about with something called klishta. Okay, so I think this is the most important tool. We teach all these tools over on the membership side. So here's the other interesting thing. If you have a fear of something, that fear of that object, what you're afraid of, doesn't come from just that thing. What do I mean by that? The fear that you have of something comes from your past experience. Right? So there is the fear of being on stage and public speaking. And then before you're even on stage, you're afraid of it. You're like backstage and you're not even there, but simply the thought of it evokes all of this fear. And then you carry that fear with you on stage. You're afraid way before you even go on stage, which I know sounds simple, right? But I want you guys to think about this precisely. What is that fear? Because the fear of being on stage is a piece. The fear of going on stage is a way bigger piece. In fact, that piece is so big that sometimes you don't even end up on stage. You end up with avoidance. This is the fear that you carry around with you. And this is the fear that if you can learn to separate that, there is the thing itself, and then there is all of the dormant fear that you carry that gets piled up on top of the thing. This is something that all the Gen Z kids are talking about when they talk about getting triggered. What is it to be triggered? To be triggered is when you have a pile of dormant stuff that gets activated in a particular circumstance. And what makes public speaking really hard is all of that dormant stuff comes up and then it's like you're dealing with way too much. So this is really interesting. There's an exercise you can do. So you can train yourself to remove the past from the present in the moment, in your mind. Whenever you encounter something, ask yourself, what does my mind add to the equation? What is actually generated from this moment and what is generated from the past? Not generated, what is carried from the past? What is generated from the moment? What is carried from the past? Ask yourself this question. And this is what's really important. Because you'll say, but Dr. K, I have good reason to be afraid because this did happen. This is my past experience and all this kind of stuff. Fine. I'm not saying that you're foolish for having fears. What I'm saying is that, I don't know if this makes sense. This is such a different way of thinking. It's a yogic way of thinking. The pain that you experience in your mind today is like mathematically generated from your current surroundings from a mechanistic standpoint, plus your past experiences. Those two things combine to create your current experience. If you can literally wall off or remove that past contribution, your life will become so much easier. And that is what yogis do with klishta. Klishta means coloring. Coloring is what they noticed is that when I'm facing this particular person, I'm not dealing with this criticism alone. My mind is adding a lot of things to it. Great example is this. I get a phone call from some people and I just look at who it is. And already I'm like, oh my God. I don't even know what they're asking me about. They could be like, hey, I won the lottery and I want to give you half, bruh. Just the simple, this thing vibrating and seeing a particular person is calling on the caller ID triggers all these kinds of emotions. And here's what's really crazy about that. Is nothing bad has even happened and I'm already torturing myself. The crazy thing that I learned in India is most of our suffering from a mechanistic standpoint. I don't mean like, most of our suffering is made by us. Oh my God. No, I mean like if you look at it, like I play a game of Dota 2 and some support POS 5 picks Pudge and my mental is already ruined. They could be a smurf. It could be a great game. They could be amazing at Pudge. Maybe they're swapping with somebody else. Like who knows? There's all kinds of things. But even the semblance of something in my mind creates suffering right there and then. So this is where the answer is even wilder than the premise, which is what do I need to do? Nothing. What you need to do is notice it. That's it. So notice what of this moment am I carrying from the past? In the moment that you separate those two things apart, the size of the stuff from the past actually starts to decrease. It happens automatically. Because when there's a rush of emotion and you feel overwhelmed, then you can't do anything, but starting to separate it out. It's magical. It takes a while to really work. And if you guys want more details, check out the Klishta lecture. Because we talk about this principle for 2 hours and what to do with it. Okay? So if you want to rewire, you got to understand two things. It's what goes in and what comes out. A focused mind is how you implant things. And whatever amount of trash is down there will be floated to the surface, and notice what is from the moment, what is from the past. Simplest way to rewire yourself. Will change the way that you move through the world because you learn how to let things in and you also learn how to separate out the bad stuff from the present. And then you can just like answer a phone call and then it's still a coin flip whether it's a mess or not. And to be clear, like, I don't think people are stupid for doing this. This is how human beings work. The basic issue is that we were not taught how we work. We are not formally educated in navigating this human instrument. Questions? So someone's joking and says, seems like a good time to smoke a bowl. So this is actually a great point. I want you guys to think about this for a second. What makes this a good time to smoke a bowl? So your mind is seeing something and then something comes up. Now is the time to smoke a bowl. What? Is disconnecting from the past different than forgetting? Absolutely, in my opinion. I would even call it detaching. So to forget is to lose. To disconnect, it exists, but I'm not plugged into it. So I think disconnecting is good. Forgetting is bad. Right, because we're deep thinking. I'm with you. Right, but notice the klishta. When deepthinking.exe, activate smokeinabowl.bat. Right? Always a good excuse. Now we're getting some there. So I'm telling you guys, if y'all are addicted to marijuana, understand klishta. Notice how your mind adds smoke a bowl to like whatever the fuck is going on. I do better inner work after smoking, to be honest. I completely understand. Hey, can you turn on the AC?
Are you telling people to smoke bowls?
No, I'm not telling people to smoke bowls. So when someone says, can you close the door?
Yeah, turn on the AC.
When someone says, I do better inner work after smoking, that I think is a skill issue. Right? So I don't doubt that you do better work smoking, but does that mean that your best work will be done while smoking? Marijuana is very effective at helping people do inner work because it calms down your anxiety, it chills you out, encourages you to see things in a different way. But it's like a crutch. It's kind of like, let me think about this. It's easier to fall asleep when I take a sleep medicine. Like, yes, that's correct, but that doesn't solve the problem. And that's the problem with drugs and psychedelics and all this stuff, is that they work. But it doesn't mean that is what you should continue to do. But I'll completely, if you tell me, hey, I do better work while high, like, yeah, I get that. A lot of people do, and that's very common. Okay. Oh, this is a good one. This one I don't have to sign up for an account. Yeah, doing inner work while high, like, I get it. It's kind of like, yeah, I win more games when I use an aimbot. Like, yeah, of course you do. Okay. Okay, let's listen to this.
Gotta learn to let go. That childhood you didn't get. Like, you can't pick up adulthood if you're still holding on to whatever it was you missed as a kid, falling through the cracks of what your parents missed as a kid. And I focus on this fault because I feel like growing into healing is growing into loss and losing that. And it's interesting because when I look back on my childhood, I have two memories. Memories of what happened and the memories of what should have happened. And that keeps me from focusing on what's happening now. Every decision I make, I'm still trying to merge those somehow and win whatever I lost when I was a kid. And so now I live in this world that I don't enjoy because I adopted this mindset of this incomplete little boy trying to travel back in time and fix whatever wasn't right. How much easier would it be to just accept that part of that was missed, instead of putting my adult development on hold to wait around for it? Because childhood is not a progress bar. It's not task-oriented. It ends with age. Whatever it was is what it was supposed to be. It's not a new responsibility, something you got to go back and complete. It's done. You got to move away from that fault, because only then can you pick up who you're supposed to be as an adult. And in order to become an adult, you got to learn to let go of that childhood you didn't get. Like, you can't pick up adulthood if you're still holding on to whatever it was you missed as a kid, falling through the cracks of what your parents missed as a kid. And I focus on this fault because I feel like growing into healing is growing into loss and losing that. And it's interesting because when I look back on my childhood, I have two memories. Memories of what happened and the memories of what should have happened. And that keeps me from focusing on what's happening now. Every decision I make, I'm still trying to merge those somehow and win whatever I lost when I was a kid. And so now I live in this world that I don't enjoy because I adopted this mindset of this incomplete little boy trying to travel back in time and fix whatever wasn't right. How much easier would it be to just accept that part of that was missed, instead of putting my adult development on hold to wait around for it? Because childhood is not a progress bar. It's not task-oriented. It ends with age. Whatever it was is what it was supposed to be. It's not a new responsibility, something you got to go back and complete. It's done. You got to move away from that fault, because only then can you pick up who you're supposed to be as an adult.
So I love this because there's a lot of good stuff. And there's a part of me that says, if you do what he says, you will end up the way that he is. Okay? So we talk about acceptance. There's a lot of good stuff here, right? So like there's the childhood that I had and there's the childhood that I should have. That growing into healing is growing into loss and accepting that this is the way life is. And I have to accept that, right? My childhood is gone. It'll never come back. I will never have that joy. And if that's the path that you take, this is the emotion that you will end up with. Because actually there's a fair amount of evidence from developmental psychology. There's a lot of good stuff here. And I respect this dude for making the poetry. It's beautifully read, really taps into something that's amazing and tragic about the triumph of the human spirit. And I think it's like kind of wrong. So if we look at developmental psychology, we learn a couple of really scary things. That life actually is a progress bar. And that if you just leave your childhood behind and you grow into an adult without that piece of childhood, and this is what happens to so many people, you will be a sad adult. You'll be an adult, but you'll be a sad adult. And this is the real tricky thing, right? Because we don't know how to reclaim that childhood. And so we sort of resign ourselves to this adulthood without a childhood. But I think that there's a lot of stuff, and today we're going to talk about someone called Erik Erikson. Okay? And Erik Erikson, I'm not trying to dunk on this guy, by the way. I genuinely think he's onto something really good. But I think it's poetry, right? There's poetry and there's science. And poetry speaks to the human experience and really taps into something that I think is very real. But then there's the science of it. So Erik Erikson comes along and he develops this theory. And what he notices is that human beings have particular goals at certain stages of development. At a particular age, you have to do a particular thing. And once you learn how to do that thing, then you can move on. And so we have a series of challenges in life. And when we fail to do a thing, we actually become developmentally stuck. And we have to sort of like fix that later in life. So if you missed a childhood, is there an element of accepting that that's gone? Absolutely. But growing into healing is growing into loss? Totally agree. But growing into healing can grow into loss, or growing into healing can grow into fullness. Which from a simple standpoint is like what we call a corrective emotional experience, right? So if you were never loved as a child, you have to accept that you were not loved as a child. That's really healthy, but that's not where it ends. The real way to fix that is to be loved as an adult, to be loved in the way that a child was loved as an adult, to be spoiled, to be indulgent. And I think there are a couple of really good examples of this through Erik Erikson, which I think make a lot of sense. Okay, so let me just pull this up and we'll go through it. So here is the progress bar of childhood. When we're somewhere around 3 to 6 years old, we have this basic task of initiative versus guilt. Okay? So what does this mean? So when a child is like 2, they don't have choices, right? They can't demonstrate initiative. They don't like get to decide what we're doing today. They don't get to control or steer their life at all. But once we get to be about 3, 4, 5, and 6, that's when we can demonstrate initiative. Hey, today I want to go to the zoo. Or if we go to the zoo, I want to see the anacondas, not the tigers. And a 5-year-old can demonstrate, they can try to steer the car of their life in small ways. And the way that people respond to that is really important. Okay? So when I want to do something, I want to see tigers. Or let's say I want to see snakes. Which means that I have an initiative. And let's say that my parents have a phobia of snakes. So they say, no, snakes are for Slytherins. And we are Gryffindors. Right? This is bad. How dare you like snakes? So when a child demonstrates initiative, right? So sometimes I'll see this with like, boys who want to wear dresses or girls who want to play with trucks, right? Or any number of things. When you demonstrate initiative, does the world punish you for it or make you feel guilty? And there's a certain amount of guilt that's kind of healthy. Okay, it's like, oh, you want to stay up till midnight, like you can't do that, that is wrong. Like this is right, this is wrong. So there's a certain amount that's healthy. But basically you have some kids who grow up in environments where what they want is punished. They're taught that you're selfish. Your step sibling wants this, you should give it to them. You're so selfish. Their desires, their wants, their needs, their initiative is met with punishment, and then they start to feel guilty. And unless they are supported enough, they will carry that forward into adulthood. And the way this looks is, as adults, their wants evoke guilt. Right? And you guys may have experienced this. I shouldn't want this. I'm being selfish. Wanting something is selfish. This kind of initiative is something that I feel bad about. Right? So these people will sometimes do punishment. They will self-punish for initiative. They will sometimes self-punish for relaxing. Because these are kids where their initiative was, hey, can I play with my friends? They're like, no, how dare you? You have to clean the house today. So they carry these things forward. They feel guilty for having wants. And the way to fix this, like if you're someone who goes through life, like feeling fundamentally guilty for wanting stuff, like you think like, oh my God, I'm such a selfish person for wanting to take a vacation by myself. Such a selfish person for like wanting distance from my parents. Such a selfish person for not wanting to spend my weekends taking care of my siblings. Right? Because people will guilt trip you to all hell. That's one picture. Another picture is self-punishment for initiative. So you're someone who like, it's so scary because some people who are kind of stuck in life, right? Like some people, like life is happening to them. They are the object. It's like they're living life in passive voice. Because in writing, people say like, don't use passive voice. Alok is. We should have Alok doing things. Alok sits, right? Not Alok is. But some of us go through life being acted upon by life. And if you're someone who's like frustrated with yourself and you say, we call this, oh, I have no motivation. I have ADHD. I have executive dysfunction. Like those things can exist, yes. But sometimes this is why I love therapy, psychotherapy. This is why I love working with patients with ADHD, because it's not just executive dysfunction. Sometimes it is. But most of the time it's not. And if you pay attention to you being stuck, what you will find, if you're stuck, you have no motivation, you feel like life is happening to you, is that when you have an initiative, you punish yourself for it. The best example of this is people who do not allow themselves to want what they believe they cannot have. If you are someone who is numb and has no motivation, Do you allow yourself to want the things that you cannot have? Because the want is the motivation. And oftentimes what we'll do is we'll protect ourselves from an empty void of an unfilled desire by not allowing ourselves to want it in the first place. But then you end up stuck. And what's really scary about this is if you want to fix this, sure, there's a certain amount of mourning the loss that's really healthy. Like, the guy's not wrong, right? So you have to accept that your parents didn't provide this for you. They made you feel guilty, whatever. But the real corrective action, this is what Erickson kind of taught us, is you have to fix those things as adults. So when I'm working with patients who have these particular things, right? So when a want evokes guilt, the corrective action is helping this person understand wanting things and being selfish are not one and the same. Just ask yourself, can I want things without being selfish? Is it fundamentally selfish to want? Because as long as those two things are tied together, you won't have that corrective experience. Right? Because what is the normal, what is the healthy version of a kid demonstrating initiative? I want an ice cream. And their parents are supportive of that. They're not like, oh my God, how dare you? Your brother and sister is lactose intolerant. And when you want ice cream, they can't have it. And like, you're making them feel terrible. How dare you? Whereas healthy parenting is like, look, you want an ice cream? Okay, let's get you an ice cream. It's hard for your brother or sister because they want ice cream too. So then you can also talk to your brother or sister. Or at a minimum, let's take you out for ice cream. Let mom and your brother or sister go do something. They can go get French fries. We're going to go get an ice cream. All right, well, let's get them a cookie, whatever. So this is where like the corrective action is supporting those unmet needs. Right? It's okay to relax. In terms of initiative, do you get punished historically? Ask yourself this question. Did you get punished for initiative? Because if the answer is yes, you really need to take a look at that. Can you allow yourself to want something that you may not be able to have? And this is the tricky thing about that is like, you have to have that first and then it hurts, right? Because you can't get it. And then you feel that loss. But that loss is also motivation. The want is motivation and the loss is motivation. Right? They took this away from me and I'm going to get it back. Arrgh. This is the corrective emotional experience. And life is a progress bar. It's scary. And if you didn't pass a class when you were 6, you need to pass it today. We'll go over another example because I think this is... So the next stage is industry versus inferiority. Okay? This is the point where someone develops competence as a skill, like they're competent in skills, and pride in oneself. Okay? So here's like the healthy example. I get a bad grade. Teacher says, you can do better. Let's do some extra homework. And then we get a good grade. Right? So what does a child learn? In this scenario. Oh, I'll continue showing. What does a kid learn? Right? There are challenges in life. There are times where I will do poorly, but doing poorly is not destiny. That I have agency. When things don't go my way, I can exert some amount of effort and I can change the outcome. I have power in this world. I can have pride in myself. It also teaches something really important about the world. When I slip up, the world is a place that will sometimes help me out. So we gain faith in the world. We gain faith in ourselves. We gain agency. We get pride. We hopefully get some skills acquisition and competence. So let's look at the bad version. Good. bad. I get a 95 on test. And my parents say, what the hell is wrong with you? Roshni Patel down the street got a 100. So you got an A and you are a POS. Industry versus inferiority. So what I love about Erickson is that he combines things that we don't normally combine. We think to ourselves, oh, if I have if I have low self-esteem, the goal is to feel better about myself. Actually, Erickson says something different. The antidote to inferiority is industry, not superiority. Right? And we have some really interesting data behind that because we know that people who feel inferior, narcissistic people who are, people who feel superior, I'm narcissistic, I'm arrogant, actually have an inferiority on the inside. Right? And this is something that we grapple with all the time in coaching because people are coming in and they have no motivation. They make comparisons. And so you may think like low self-esteem, what's the antidote? The antidote is actually industry. It's getting them to do stuff. And doing something, anything, will affect their esteem. Okay? So when we, as children, when we do things, and even if we're successful, if we're compared, comparison is like the number one thing that leads to problems with industry and inferiority, right? So this is like all these gifted kids who are burnt out, people make comparisons. We see this with like black sheep and golden child, right? You got an A, you got a B, your brother or your sister got an A. Like there's a smart one, there's a stupid one. You're constantly made comparisons. You are not judged by your industry. You are judged through comparison. And then this too creates all kinds of problems in adulthood. So this leads to a couple of problems. Okay? Let's go through them. So in adulthood, when we do this, we are left with persistent feelings of inadequacy. That's number one. Next thing we do is sidestep challenges that can result in failure. Right? Because it's not about industry, it's about being number one. And if we can't be number one, we're not even going to try. The most crippling is an identity that is based on achievement. So this is the idea that your worth equals accomplishments. In the moment that this happens, you're kind of like SOL. There's no like, this is where people like, so once you tie your worth to your accomplishments, you're screwed no matter what you do. Because if your worth is tied to your accomplishments and you accomplish, you're terrified of losing that worth and that accomplishment down the road. Even if you do well, and here's what's so painful about it, right? So if your worth is tied to your accomplishments, what'll happen over time is you'll rise in society. So you'll go to a community college, you'll do well, you'll go to a 4-year university, the competition there is harder. Then you'll go to graduate school. Competition there is harder. You're maybe moving up a tier in universities each step of the way. This is why there's way more imposter syndrome at Harvard Medical School than there is at like Houston Community College. So even though you're accomplishing a lot, you still feel terrified. You'll have a lot of imposter syndrome. And then the other really crippling thing is that imposter syndrome, that anxiety, that concern, that sidestepping of challenges, because you don't want to be number 2, you don't want to be number 100. You don't see it as, what do you call the person who graduates at the bottom of their class in medical school? You call them doctor. You don't see them that way. You see it as this person is a loser. I don't want to be that loser. And then eventually that anxiety, that imposter syndrome, those things will predispose you to failure. Right? Because you've got a performance mindset instead of a growth mindset. And all these other fuckers have growth mindsets. So when they get a B, they study harder, they dig deep, they believe in themselves, the world helps them, and I'm just panicking because I knew I was stupid. I knew I didn't belong. Oh my God, it's true. This is the beginning of the end. And then I panic. And then once I panic, the decay happens. The tumbling of the rocks, the avalanche has now started. Right? Because I'm building this thing up. I'm trying to keep it together, but it's not sustainable. I'm burning out. I feel like an imposter. And then everything comes crashing down like I knew it would. And now I have a bigger problem, which is that I knew I was going to fuck it up, and I was right. GG. But where does this come from? It comes from industry versus inferiority. And this is part of the progress bar of childhood. And if you do not beat this stage, this will carry forward as an adult. And so how do you fix this? My favorite thing to do is to have people demonstrate competence in isolation. This is all fueled by comparison for the most part. So when you start doing things and being proud of yourself, when you see the worth in yourself by doing something that you set out to do and has nothing to do with anybody else. I'm going to plant a garden. I'm going to write a book. Not write a bestseller, just write a book. This is a goal that I have. I'm going to climb this mountain. I'm going to hike the Appalachian Trail. You got to start doing stuff. The antidote to inferiority is industry, not superiority, not even self-esteem. It's doing things where no one can see. And when you feel pride from in here for what you have done, you will carry that pride forward. Then what'll happen is you'll have that pride in here when things don't go your way in the real world, because that happens eventually. And that will be the buffer. Then you've solved that problem, right? It goes back to the kid who got a B, worked hard, got an A. Now they believe in themselves. And you had all these setbacks, and now you conquered those things. So now you believe in yourself. Life is a progress bar. So at the end of the day, I think this is one of those things where, like, there's the childhood you had and the childhood you should have had. And is one of those needing to be grieved? Absolutely. But if you stop at grief, like, you're just going to be left sad. What a lot of the camp of developmental psychology that I subscribe to, right? So I'm not the speaker of truth, teaches us, and I think this is just like works so much better, is reclaim your childhood. Be a kid. It's amazing. I strongly recommend it. If you were denied a childhood, the solution, sure, there's a certain amount of grief and a certain amount of blame and a certain amount of letting things go. But also, like, if you have a romantic relationship, let them spoil you. Right? So this is one of these things that, I don't know, this is something that multiple people have told me about, but I've never heard talked about, which is the healthy infantilization in romantic relationships. And it's something, it blows my mind. I've talked to half a dozen people who do this, called baby voice. And it's not like they got together and communicated. I've never heard this talked about. It's baby voice. That in romantic relationships that are secure, one of the partners, this isn't like diaper fetish or something like that. Like one of the partners will become a child and will adopt a voice. and then somebody, like their partner, will like take care of them as a parent. Right? It's so weird. Like, I've heard this from half a dozen people at this point. And I'm curious, do you guys do baby voice? Yeah, see, this is what I'm talking, like, oh, most people are like, what the fuck are you talking about? And some people are like, yeah, we both did it. I love baby talking. Like, this is so weird. One of my exes, yes, in past, both me and my man. Okay, see, this is the really interesting thing. The more secure you are, right? Yes, this is me. This is like, no one talks about baby voice. And people are like, I love this, because this was how I felt about it. Right? Some people like, this is disgusting. I hate this. Other people like, yeah, we do it. It's awesome. Freaks me out. Yes, to my longtime girlfriend. I find it cringe. And I don't think it's like just, it's not like a particular kind. It's like, I'm going to be a whiny little bitch and I want you to take care of me. I don't think it's goo goo gaga. It's not like baby. It's like, I'm going to infantilize myself and you are going to support that infantilization. Right? And what we know from psychiatry is, like, basically in therapy, sometimes we try to provide these corrective emotional experiences, but we don't do this. That's why, like, the thing is corrective emotional experience. The emotional experience is what's important. We do it a particular way in LARPing to I love chat, dude. Hi, my name is Alok. In my free time, I LARP as a parent for my romantic partners. Yeah, so this is great. So I used to find it cringe, but I found my girl and now I can't stop doing it. This is such a good comment, okay? So here's what I pieced together about baby voice. It is cringe until you enter this weird, uncharted territory of like emotional safety. And then once you enter that territory, it like is, what's the word? Fulfilling. Like, and some people are even asking, isn't that a normal part of a relationship? I don't think so. Maybe a normal part of really healthy relationships. I actually believe this. We don't, no, see, it's not acting like a baby. Like, so this is not a nut that I've cracked yet, okay? You don't act like a baby. It's not an act. Like, you become infantilized and your partner accepts you in that infantilized state, which then makes you feel like really accepted. Right? And it's not, I mean, I've seen like unhealthy versions of this, which is like more what people think, right? Which is like, oh, it's like this kid has like some scat fetish or some diaper or whatever. Like, it's not like sucking your thumb. It's like, I'm going to signal to you that I need to be taken care of in a very, and we have a certain template for this, right? Which is like, I'm going to be a baby. And it can be cringe. So it's cringe when one person, like, there's like an organic development of this kind of thing. And then there's like the cringe imposing of this thing, right? So like when I'm texting you on a dating app and I'm like, ooh, woo, me, that's cringe. This comes out of it like grows out of, it's like a truffle. Like you can't farm it. You can't create it, but in the right circumstances, if you sniff around for a while, you're going to find it. It's so fascinating to me. I gotta see if there's any. Let's see. Okay. Baby voice in adults relationship. See, look, 1996. Talk to me, baby. Oh my God, dude. Brooks Publishing. Abstract. Let us plumb the depths of the internet, chat. It's studied most extensively as it is spoken by mothers to infants, but without attention is possible role. We suggest that baby talk plays such a role. No, this is about baby. Oh, wait. Which is the first empirical documentation that baby talk occurs in adult romances and friendships. Yeah, look, individuals who had baby talk to friends or romantic partners tended to be more secure and less avoidant with regard to attachments in general. Within a particular romantic relationship, indicators of intimacy and attachment accounted for about 22% of the variance in baby talk frequency. Oh, so partners baby talking was the strongest predictor, accounting for about 42% of the variance. That's really interesting. That means that if your partner baby talks, that's the strongest influence in you baby talking. Yeah, dude. And this is in 1996. I wonder if there's more. Let's see if this is cited by. Yeah, we gotta. I gotta do a better literature search for this. I love exploring this stuff, but it's like it's hard because it's not like a term. Anyway, where were we? We got a couple more things that I wanted to talk about. Okay. What do y'all, any thoughts or questions before we, is it okay to fall in love with an anime body pillow? I would go ahead and say no. Let's talk about falling in love with an anime body pillow. So, do y'all think it's okay to fall in an anime body pillow, in love with an anime body pillow? And if so, why? But I mean, I'm open. My instinct is no, but let's talk about it. Let's not be judgmental. For people who think it's okay, what makes you think it's okay? Why not is a good question. If you talked about limerence, hell yeah, I've talked about limerence. There's a really good video on limerence on the YouTube channel. Is this a real discussion? Yes. Yeah, so it makes you stop feeling alone. So I think these are some really good comments. Okay. So let's take a look at falling in love with an anime body pillow, waifu, take your pick. Right? So this is not like this is something that's happening with increasing frequency. Why do people fall in love with body pillows, AI girlfriends, take your pick? So first let's understand what love is. Right? So love is a need, is also an expression. And I think what we're starting to see is that like love is punishing. I recently saw a study. If you guys want me to pull it up, just say so. I recently saw a study about how, when you like someone and they say, hey, it's not you, it's me, or I'm not in a good place right now. I saw a really disturbing study that shows that if someone rejects you, it's because of you. They're just saying that. Like, we all sort of like smell like our BS meters go off and we're like, oh, this person really is rejecting me. They're just making up an excuse. And actually, that's true. Most people who reject people reject them for who they are, not because of some circumstance. And the reason for that is really interesting. So when someone rejects somebody else's romantic advances, for the person doing the rejecting, it's a lose-lose situation. There's nothing to gain because they don't want the relationship. And they're going to end up hurting the other person, right? Because they understand that rejection is hurtful. So they try to minimize the hurt by making up some excuse so that you don't take it personally, which is like what we all instinctively believe, which turns out is probably true. Because they just want to mitigate the damage from your affection towards them, or vice versa. There's also really interesting, this is kind of wild. One study I saw, the internet's going to go insane. One study I saw demonstrated that people who do rejecting are hurt more than the people who are rejected. Which I know is going to everyone's going to go oh my God, how can you say that? And this is what's also really interesting. So this study, the way this study works is they were asking people, when you reject someone, what do you feel? And when you get rejected, what do you feel? And basically the person doing the rejecting has some degree of empathy. They feel guilty. They don't want to engage in the relationship. The overwhelming feeling that they have is, I wish this had never happened. Whereas the person who is being rejected has some positive emotions in there, like hope and love. So their total experience has some positive emotion, which there's still issues of loving and hoping and then being rejected, which hurts in a certain way. But there's some negative and some positive. Whereas for the person doing the rejecting, it's all negative. There's no positive. Which, anyway, we can talk about that later. The issue of, is it unhealthy, I think that was the question, right? Is it okay to fall in love with an anime body pillow? And I would say that generally speaking, love that is not reciprocated is... Actually, I wouldn't say that. I was about to say is not healthy, but I think there's a lot of love that is unreciprocated that is probably healthy. Right? So if we take the case of a parent loving a child who is 6 months old before they pass away, it's not clear that that love is ever reciprocated, but would I call that unhealthy? Absolutely not. So what is it? Let me think about this. So I think when people are falling for body pillows and anime girlfriends and things like that, we got to understand where this is coming from. And my take on it is this is removal of a negative. So there's a certain pain to going to sleep at night by yourself. And this pain is something that is almost like tumor. So it's starts a little bit and then the tumor grows. And the more days and the more months and the more years that you just fall asleep by yourself, you ache for something. And then we sort of know that we're kind of wired for this, right? Because children will sleep with stuffed animals as a form of comfort. So I don't think that people who fall for anime body pillows are losers. I think we have to understand there's some biological drive here, and to have something that tricks your body and tricks your mind substitutes for some of the things of a real human relationship, right? It's like calories without nutrition, but it'll fill your stomach. So I think that's one element of it. And I think when we look at things like anime girlfriends and things like that, or virtual girlfriends, once again, there's like an ache of loneliness that is alleviated by this thing. Filling you up, calories, but not nutrition. Because it's not clear to me whether the girlfriend can ever love you back. They can display love, but is there real love? Which is also up for debate. So I made a video about AI, and it was really cool. Someone on our subreddit was like, hey, Dr. K, when you say the AI doesn't think, let me see if I can pull this up. Really fascinating. You don't know what you're talking about, bruh. I want to show you all something. Let's take a look at this. This is not the paper. So they were like, hey, Dr. K, like an AI can think. It's not just finding the word. And they posted a bunch of papers. And then I read all the papers. I'm looking for a particular one. Not survey, definitely not this one. I'm looking for the one that... Oh. Wait, this paper I don't remember, but this is interesting. Maybe it's this one. Maybe it's this one. Okay. Oh, give me a second, chat. Let's pull this up. I don't think this is the right one. I want to find, maybe this is the right one. Yeah, maybe this is it. Yeah, image generation beyond memorization. I think this is the one. Nope. So there's basically... I'm going to have to just explain it. Maybe this is it. Yes. Okay, this is the paper, okay? So, emergent world representations exploring a sequence model trained on a synthetic task. Okay? So, do these networks just memorize a collection of surface statistics, or do they rely on internal representations of the process that generates the sequence that they see? We investigate this question in a synthetic setting by applying a variant of the GPT model to task the predicting of legal moves in a simple board game, Othello. Although the network has no a priori knowledge of the game or its rules, we uncover evidence of an emergent, non-linear, internal representation of the board state. Okay? Interventional experiments indicate this representation can be used to control the output of the network. So I'm going to explain is what I understood. Okay? So basically, what happens is you can feed the AI like data sets, right? And then what happens is the AI actually develops I'm going to try to find this is hard to dig into. I'll just explain it, I think. Let's see if there's a good... Okay, yeah, I'm going to have to explain it. I know this is getting off track. Okay. Oh, lag. We okay? We okay? Just close that. Let's just close up some stuff. Let's close up some stuff. Close. Okay. Can you get... Okay. Okay, we're good. Okay. So let's understand something. So here's what that paper basically shows. So I was like, I don't think AIs think, they just parrot things, right? They just they figure out what the next word is and then they just parrot it. But what this paper basically suggests is that if you feed an AI a data set, it develops an internal representation of the rules of the game that is beyond the data set. And it uses that internal representation to make predictions. So it can basically, it's not just crunching the numbers of what you give it. It crunches the numbers, develops an internal model, creates its own internal model to explain the data set. And it can use that internal model to make predictions. So this is where things get really weird with AI girlfriends. Because I think there's a lot of problems with the paper. Basically, they extrapolate too far, in my opinion, but I'm not an expert in AI. But I think it begs a really important question, which is is an AI, so if an AI is capable of thinking, which is still a big if, is it capable of not the subjective part of feeling, not the subjective part of love? It's not clear to me that it has the neurocircuitry and oxytocin and things like that. But is it capable of the cognitive element of love? Right? So this is also where we got to be really careful, because the instinctual response is the problem with loving an AI or loving a body pillow for sure, is that it can't love you back. And I think the basic problem with that is that as a human being, when I fill myself up with calories, I no longer have a drive for nutrition. And so if I start sleeping with a body pillow, it alleviates my pain, but I've found an equilibrium now that is probably not ideal for me in the long term. And this is the challenge, right? Is why is everybody not everybody, but why are anime body pillow sales on the rise? Why are AI girlfriends on the rise? Because we are faced with a problem that is difficult to solve. And so along comes this replaceable solution, which is not a great solution. I think it's not the problem with the AI girlfriend or the anime body pillow. And this is also this is questionable too. So if I'm dying of cancer, will the AI girlfriend take care of me? And my instinctive answer was no, right? It can't take care of you, but it can take care of you sort of. Can it provide you with emotional support? Can it trick you into thinking that you are loved? And what's the difference between being tricked into thinking you're loved and being loved? I personally believe that there's a difference. But I think we have to be really careful. If we're truly open-minded and truly critical, we can't operate based on our assumptions. So on balance, I think it's not healthy to love or fall in love with a body pillow. I don't think it's healthy to have a relationship with an AI girlfriend. I think it alleviates some amount of pain, but the whole reason I started streaming here and the reason we made Dr. K's Guide to Love, Sex, and Relationships is because I want to help you get what you want instead of settling for what you can get. And I do believe that the world is changing and the rules are changing and what used to work doesn't work. And I have very little doubt in my mind that if I was 21 years old today, I would be down the red pill looks maxing incel pipeline for sure, because I was that. The thing that made me lucky was I was forced to go to a physical college where I had repeated interactions for 5.5 years with people of the opposite gender, and I fucked that up for 3 years, and then 3 years of unintentional practice with peer support helped me figure out how to do it. And so it can be learned, it's just hard. And so what we try to do here is give y'all a condensation or distillation of the most important information. But my goal is not to have y'all settle for what you can get, but to really strive for to get what you want. And I choose to maintain the belief that success is possible. I'm not even saying I'm right, but that's the thing that I choose to believe. I don't give up on my patients, generally speaking. Even when the data is against me, because I think that that's a losing proposition strategically. Because when you give up is really when you fail. The only way to guarantee failure is to give up. And there's plenty of cognitive biases in your head, lack of experience, lack of skills, all of those variables can be changed. So let's change them. Great question. Okay. We should take a quick look at this. So, you get a text. I'll reply later. 20 minutes later, you're eating your food. 5 days later, you haven't replied. What's up with this? So one of the weirdest things is that if you're like not a good texter, you get judged pretty harshly for it in today's environment, like especially with things like dating. You know, like if like people like, yeah, like this person didn't text good enough. And like, I understand that that's an important part of relationships now. But the interesting thing is, as texting has become more important, a large number of people are like really doing bad at it. Right? And that's what's so scary is that there's like this, the world is changing and we need to adapt, but this is really hard for me. And there are so many things that I think we take for granted about people who text easily. There are certain personality things about them, the way that their brain is wired, that really makes it easy for them. So I wanted to talk about a couple things that I've noticed. So the first is before the internet and before telecommunications, you had social interactions when you were prepared for social interactions. So if I'm like at home, like 1,000 years ago, if I'm a peasant in my hut and it's 7:48 p.m. and I'm doing the dishes before I go to bed at night, no one has the option to communicate with me. We received communications from other people when we were prepared cognitively, emotionally to respond to communications. Right? Because I put on my smock and then I head outside and I go to the tavern or I go to the market and then I'm like prepared to respond to communication. So one of the really interesting things is right now we live in a world where I can receive a communication without any consent, without any preparation. And so I'm not prepared to respond to it, which makes it hard to respond to. So some people are more moldable or more like adaptable with being prepared for communications all the time. The more extroverted you are, the better you can do with that. Some people, if they don't get texts all hours of the day, if they're very extroverted, they're going to start feeling bad. No one's texting me. What is lifeblood for some is drowning for others. It's a big, big difference. Second thing is when you get a text, there's a certain expectation of response. So paradoxically, the better you try to text, right? So if your friend sends you like, you're getting into bed for the night and you're going to watch, I don't know, season whatever of whatever dating TV show. This is your guilty pleasure. You have your drink and your popcorn and you're ready to, and then you get this long text about, oh, my boyfriend did this, my girlfriend did this really long text that's emotional and heartfelt from a friend of yours. You can't just respond, bruh, right? But we know people like that. There are people who will respond single, these are dating nightmares of like single, like, yeah. What do you like to do? Stuff. What kind of stuff? Fun stuff. People who just put in very little effort. Right? And there's like people who like don't want to put in very little effort. And now we have a problem because your friend has dumped you with like a large thing and it deserves a certain kind of response. But the more it deserves a response, the harder it is to muster up at any hour of the day. So like, this is what's also hard is I've noticed that people who don't text back usually try to do a better job at texting. So the better job you want to do, the harder it is to do, which kind of makes sense. And if you're willing to half-ass it, what kind of stuff? Fun stuff. Right? Then there are the people who half-ass it. That's like, those are like your options. Either you're an extrovert, or you half-ass it, or you try to do a good job. So like, this is something that's growing a lot. And then there's another element that's really interesting, which has to do with procrastination. Why does 20 minutes later turn into 5 days later? So here's what's fascinating. This is why like procrastination is so hard, okay? I'm going to try to explain it. So let's say I get a text and I have to respond. There is a certain burden from that response, right? I got to like come up with something that's empathic and good and whatever. Oh, option number 4 of people is people who use ChatGPT to write their texts for them. Right? And then you have 2 people who are just communicating with ChatGPT. It's just ChatGPT talking to itself. So there's the burden of the action itself. But the moment that you procrastinate, when you try to do the action tomorrow, you have an additional burden of, let's call it guilt. So now it's like, let's say that the joules of energy, let's say, call it the J, is joules of energy required to complete an action. Right? So to text back today costs me J. To text back tomorrow is J plus G. G being the guilt that I feel for not getting it done. G being frustrated with myself for not doing it yesterday. So here's what's really scary about procrastination is if you let procrastination start, it only gets harder. And that's what we see with texting. That's why 20 minutes becomes 5 days. Because now the next day you're like, oh, I should have responded yesterday. So now I need to modify my text to account for, I need to add a sentence why I didn't respond yesterday. And then you write that sentence out and you're like, oh, that sounds self-absorbed. So now you have this additional burden. And each day that goes by, you have an additional emotional hill to climb. And so it's fascinating to me how something as simple as texting really does spiral out of control. It's scary. Yeah, shame on recognizing I should do this, but I still haven't done it. And that only increases. The solution is always accountability, sure, but here's what I would say. If you're procrastinating, the main question to ask yourself is, what's this going to be like when I do it tomorrow? Right? And here's the thing with procrastination is like, we bank on ourselves having more energy the next day. So it's a certain amount of energy, J, joules of energy, but then my battery will be filled. That's why I'll be able to do it. But what you really need to understand is that you may have more energy tomorrow, but it'll cost you more. And as you understand that, it'll shift towards away from procrastination. The biggest problem with procrastination is that we assume that the energy cost is the same every day. Right? It is, I have to write a paper. Writing a paper has a static energy cost. No, it doesn't. The cost of writing the paper grows. The moment that your brain understands that calculation, it'll be way easier to avoid procrastination. Okay. So this is something I thought was pretty... Why am I so tough? I'm not tough. I would not describe myself as tough, chat. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of good stuff here. Someone saying, I guess if you're choosing not to text, why complain about loneliness or lack of relationship? At a point, you need to be intentional and put in effort. You reap what you sow. So I'm a big fan of taking personal accountability for your problems. I still think it's tricky. Because the sad thing is that you don't reap what you sow. Not just one-to-one. Some people reap way more than they sow. And some people sow a lot and reap very little. That's what I think makes life really hard. Is, 10 people can study for 10 hours. They're not all going to get the same grade. But I'm with you. I think too many people are, and I think people in our community are aware. They're like crippling loneliness, terrifying anxiety. How do I stop this? I can't move on from my BPD-X. Please help me. So I think seeing a therapist is a good idea. So I think moving on from a BPD-X, I've helped a lot of people do this. Usually revolves around the dream of curing the bad and being left with the good. So as long as you are like, I can get the good without the bad, that dream is what makes it hard to move on. The real thing that messes with your head is that that's actually possible. But generally speaking, I think it's not likely. Actually, which is statistically untrue. It's hard. But I think generally speaking, people stay stuck when they see the good and they know there's bad. And they think to themselves, if I can fix the bad, I'll only be left with the good. Okay. I want to show you all something. I wish I could be myself again. So years ago and now. So like, this is something that I'm seeing more and more of like people, people have been talking about burnout. And it used to be like a corporate thing, but now it's like a life thing. So when like a couple of years ago, I want to say I've seen this change even like, during COVID is when this really started changing quite drastically. Is people would, people used to be happy and now we're just like not happy. Like what's happening? And I think a big part of it is that there used to be like hustle culture, and hustle culture was for hustlers. Somewhere along the way, hustle culture became necessary for survival. Hustle culture, to hustle used to be to go faster than normal. That's the word what the word means. But now we live in a society where hustle has become baseline. It's like, just think about it this way. I mean, people will talk about, median home price and all this kind of stuff. The amount of effort that it used to take to find a job and the amount of effort it takes to find a job now. How many places, if you applied to 100 places, you were called a hustler. Now people apply to 100 places a day. So the goalposts have shifted so astronomically that people are just burnt. And this is where like, there's an answer here, but it's a really nasty one. Okay, so we've got three choices. And people will criticize me. They'll be like, why doesn't Dr. K acknowledge the difficulty of the circumstances we face? Like, why doesn't he talk more about how, like, we're depressed because the world sucks? And the reason I don't talk about that stuff much is, first, I'm a psychiatrist, not a sociologist. So my area of intervention is the person, not the environment around them. The second thing is, it's hard to change society. Easier to change yourself, in my opinion. That's up for debate, though, because you could argue that changing yourself is like the hardest thing. So now we're like kind of left with like a really tricky situation, which is you're burnt out, you used to be happy. And there's a good reason you're burnt out. It's probably because you have to fill out 100 job applications a day, because you went to Berkeley for computer engineering and now you can't find a job, because you've been at Oracle for 23 years and they're firing another round of 21,000 employees because they're replacing it with AI, which is probably not actually replacing it with AI, which is probably a financial compensation for overhiring during COVID when money was all over the place. Right? So the world sucks. And here's what's crazy. The harder the world becomes, the more extreme the world becomes, I think the less power that you have to change over it. So what that means is that the task that needs to be done is getting harder, but your resources stay the same, which means that we have to, what I'm going to talk about today is going to be doubling down on fixing this problem, which is going to be really hard because the world is a different place. So how do we fix this? This is going to be kind of weird. So there's a lot of very practical stuff around burnout, which we'll get to, which I'm not saying doesn't need to be done, right? So this person had a different life from this person. You have to kind of undo a lot of this. But if you guys want sort of like a, how do I fix this? What's the root of this problem? What are some things that I can do that do not involve changing the world or hustling more? A lot of the way that you feel has to do with your perspective. Okay? And we sort of know this, but we don't like it. Because, like, you know, getting a 90 on a test is good, but if somebody else gets 100 and then I don't feel good about that, like, that's... So the first thing that I want to point out is the tragedy of the good old days is that we don't know when we're in them. That's the real problem. We thought COVID was a mess. Oh my God, things are so much worse. Oh boy, you have no idea. What we would give for COVID. What we would give for work from home and baking bread and planting gardens. Right? So the tragedy of life is that we don't know how good we have it. And now the real interesting thing, so this is just a cognitive thing. So there's this thing called splitting. And splitting involves the false separation between idealization and demonization. So splitting is something that we encounter a lot with people who have borderline personality disorder, and they'll have one person on the unit who's like, oh my God, you're the doctor, you're amazing, you're the best, you can cure me when no one else has cured me. And that nurse is terrible. The nurses are all terrible. They're terrible. They're the worst nurses. Here's how good you are. Because the nursing staff is so bad, you are so brilliant that you can overcome the damage that the nurses are doing. Anytime we think in black and white, this is a false thinking. So one of the weird roots of this problem is in the way that you diagnose it. Because we idealize the past and we demonize the present. Because I feel bad right now, but I don't remember what this was really like. And then what y'all are going to do is tell me I'm wrong. No, Dr. K, you don't understand. It really was better back then. And I'm not saying, I don't know. But yeah, sure, things were probably better back then because that's the trend. That doesn't mean that it isn't multifactorial, that there's an element of idealization of the past. Right? And this is why we break up and get back together. Oh my God, I can't live with this person. We're done. Oh my God, things were so great. I can't believe I let this person out of my life. Oh my God. The past was always better. Right? Let's get back together. Oh my God, I had so much freedom when I was not with this person. But that's them, right? That's not you. That's like stupid people who make mistakes. They have cognitive biases. You don't have a cognitive bias. Things were, yeah, right? You're special. So the first thing to understand, and this is what the Dalai Lama says, one of the hardest things to do in life is to see the world as it is. And here's what's really scary: as human beings, we love to make comparisons. And people will say that comparison is the thief of joy. My favorite experiment about this is about the pleasantness or unpleasantness of water. So they had a really cool experiment where they had a human being stick their hand in water. And the water was painfully cold. And it's at a certain degree. And so then they're like, how painful is this? And people will say, this is an 8 out of 10. This is terrible. Then what they did is they had human beings stick their hand in water that is even colder. But then they add warmer water. So you'll have 0 degree water and negative 10 degree water. So I stick your hand in 0 degree water. How does it feel? It feels terrible. Stick your hand in negative 10 degree water and then increase the temperature of the water from negative 10 to negative 5. So the water gets warmer at the end, but is still colder than the other one. And then you ask human beings, how bad is this? It's not nearly as bad as the other thing. We as human beings are not sensitive to absolute values. We are sensitive to relative changes. Right? And we live in a world where, like, the stock market is a good example of this. Like, it's just nutso because we're sensitive to changes, not sensitive to absolute values. This causes problems in relationship because this is where, what have you done for me lately? The historic amount of effort that you put into a relationship gets wiped away very quickly based on what you're doing now. Also recency bias. So if this is your life, you have to be careful about the comparison because the comparison is what is potentially making the present bad. Or worse, let's say, than it is. I'm not saying that it's objectively bad. What I'm saying is if there is a decline, you will be hypersensitive to that. Now, here's the really interesting thing. If I... Hold on. So let's say I do this. Let me ask you guys something. This is kind of weird. This person is sad because this came before and this is now. What comes before this person? Right? So if we just go ahead and... What is before this? Nothing. And if my argument is relative stuff is what creates unhappiness, and we kind of get rid of this, we kind of get rid of this, this is what we find about the joyous points in our life. That the joyous points in our life are the ones without comparison. Right? The joyous points in our life are when we exist in the present. Right? So if we look at fundamental sources of suffering, anxiety is the future. Depression is the past. Joy is in the present. You can't be happy in the future. Even the joy from the past doesn't sit with you today. right? This is what's really interesting. It's baked in that we look in the past, but is the comparison itself, right? Like, it's like, okay, I like to drink an ice cold soda. And as the soda gets warm, I enjoy it less. But on a different day, can I enjoy a moderately cold soda? Can I derive satisfaction in that? And the answer is absolutely yes. So what made the good old days is that you were just there. There wasn't a comparison. There wasn't something in the past and something in the futures. You were just there. You don't realize you're in the good old days because the nature of joy is to be in the present. So much of our suffering is not from the present. It is from the projection of the present. There is the pain of heartbreak, and there is the destiny of being alone. Oh my God, if you guys have visited forever alone communities, incel communities, their pain is not the ache, simply the ache of the present. The ache of the present is there. It's the destiny. Forever alone. Right? Because these are the people that can predict the future. And you can make predictions about the future, right? We have staging of cancer treatment. And this cancer has stage 1, has this survival rate. So there's like some utility to this stuff. That's what's tricky about this. Is if you say things were genuinely better back then, I don't disagree. But what is it that you can change? What is that you can control? I wish I could be myself again. And this is probably the most devastating comparison that we make. The comparison of our former self. The most harmful comparison is a comparison to ourself. Because sure, we can say comparing yourself to other people is not helpful, is harmful. Fine. But when we compare ourselves to other people, we have some copium. Oh, they had rich parents and I didn't have rich parents. They had an intact household. I didn't have an intact household. They're beautiful. I'm ugly. At least we can have some differentiation, right? We can have something to account. There are other variables which account for different outcomes. So we can huff some copium. But when we compare to ourselves, there's no copium to huff. Which is why when we have become less than what we were, that's a special kind of pain. When you had something in your hands and you let it go, you were at the top of your class and you graduated from MIT and then there was a failure to launch. You had everything and now you've been out of work for 5 years and you fucked it all up. There's no copium. And the even worse thing about that is that that comparison is just as unfair as any other. That comparison is just as problematic. The comparison to yourself is still a problem. There are 2 reasons for that. The first is another kind of yogic Hindu Buddhist teaching is the source of suffering is our attempt as human beings to make that which is impermanent into something that is permanent. We try to wrestle the laws of physics, and when they don't respond, we get butthurt. How do I find that person again? What did this person say? Let's find the exact phrasing. I wish I could be myself again. You are yourself right now. I wish I could be myself again. I empathize with it. I understand how you feel, but you're yourself right now, but you want that version of you. But that version of you is gone. Right? And if your problem solving and what you want is fundamentally unachievable, like there's just suffering. And the more that you want it, the more suffering you're going to get. I wish I could be myself again. You are so caught up in wanting to find your previous self that you are ignoring what you can be today. I want that. I wish. You're looking over there, looking over there. And you play the tape through your head, contrafactual thinking and all that kind of stuff. Right? Which is why people say, live for today. This is why. Because you can't reclaim yourself. That thing is gone. There is no permanence in life. And this is the other thing, right? This is what's really weird. I work with a lot of like very successful people who have a lot of money, and they're like terrified of losing their money. And everyone tries to hold on. I want to hold on to this forever. You can't. Impossible to hold on to this forever. Life is temporary. Change is the only constant, right? We say this stuff, but you don't live in that way. You have to start living in that way. This is only going to happen now. This relationship exists now. There's nothing I can do to guarantee it. Can I invest in it? Absolutely. But there's no guarantee. And this problem of time dilation is also where so many of our other problems come from. I'll do it tomorrow. Because the task will be the same. No, it won't. Tomorrow the circumstances will be different. It'll be one day later. It'll be the weekend. You'll have waited one more day. Now is the only time that action can be taken. Now is the only time that life can be lived. Literally. Like technically. And so it is in your desire to find your former self that you are actually becoming this way. Because I want you to think about this. Can you ever return to the past? No. And if you can't return to the past, wanting this and having this be impossible is a great way to feel like this. This person is looking this way. This person is looking absolutely nowhere. And this is the hard thing. Is like life is worse. I really believe that. I think life is better and life is worse. We have plenty of indicators that a lot of stuff in the world has gotten better. What's really scary is I think we have a growing number of indicators that human beings are not doing as well. We actually like have data that we peaked. IQ is dropping for the first time in human history. Mental illness has been on the rise. People's purchasing power 20 years ago, 25 years ago was far greater than it is today. Suicide rates are climbing. Infant mortality is down. So we're really good at bringing kids into the world, and then they just take themselves out of it. We have the highest number of college-educated people that we've ever had, and we have the highest number of unemployed people. I don't know that we've ever had, but unemployment is on the rise, right? So it's like we're moving some metrics forward, and we're like losing ground elsewhere. Whereas generally speaking, humanity has been like on an upward thing. We're hitting a real critical point right now. Maybe this is just a bias because that's how every generation thinks, but I think there's data to back this up. No. Love this. How does it feel to be part of the peak? No. We're not past the peak. This is the decline, y'all. Kali Yuga, the end of times, right? I heard some stuff about Peter Thiel and trying to cultivate the birth of the Antichrist or something. I don't know if any of that stuff is real. Anyway. Questions before we wrap for the day. I refuse the anti-AI soapbox. Yeah, I mean, I'm not, I don't know, man. Kali Yuga, like, I don't know. I don't know, dude. Okay. Thanks for coming today, y'all. It's nice to be back. Take care, everybody. Adios.